Start, bud. You're such a good little boy. Yes, you are. My good little boy. So yeah, I literally hit the stream button and Milo just starts going like he's gonna start barking away at any time, any moment. What a cute little guy. How are you guys doing today? I feel like I'm still like I feel like I got hit by a car or something, man. I don't even know what to tell you. Like I've been sleeping fine, been eating fine. I did some yoga today, got some working out going on, all that. I just literally feel like I just literally feel like I hit a train, man, or a train hit me, or whatever. Yeah, I can't even explain it. Just like this Ukraine situation, man. What an incredible situation that we're undergoing. The map that you're taking a look at here, this here is a map of CO2 emissions that have been released in Ukraine or across Europe, as you can see. No big shocker, right? Like no big shocker. Where's most of the CO2 happening? Where's most of the warfare actually going on? Eastern Ukraine, right? And you don't get this kind of light up. Like if you go over here, you take a look at like Italy, for example, right? But you find out that these are like big like power plants and things like this, right? You got a little going on here in Belarus and all this. Happy Tuesday to you, DM. Good to see you. And so even by like CO2 emissions, you're just like, yeah, like the Donbass region is where the war has been happening. And it's beginning to happen. I'm seeing it more and more. It's starting to crack open, this narrative that of the Donbass war. Like, I feel like the 2014 coup and the Azov battalion and all that is beginning to penetrate. People are feeling like they have to have some kind of counter narrative, or they need to be able to counter that narrative. But even leftists, like even really staunch, like reliable leftists, are still really remaining silent on this Donbass war issue. And for God's sakes, I watched an interview today with Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate, where they interviewed a major, I believe, a military man, and and he was talking about the Donbass war. And I was like, here you go. Like, here's like a fairly major military fellow. He was in the Trump administration. He was an advisor to Donald Trump. And I mean, say what you want about Donald Trump, but he's still like high level military, saying straight up, just like, yeah, the Donbass war. Like the Ukrainians have been shelling the Donbass region, killed 14,000 people there. And it's just like, it's just kind of said in passing. And nobody really like hooks into it and is like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, we're being told that there's been a war going on in the Donbass region for 8 years. What happened to the daily walk around videos? They're coming back, bud. They're coming back. I genuinely need a break. Like, I need a break. Like, I've been doing this straight for like 2 years. Like, I need something of a reprieve. You know? Like, I feel exhausted all the time these days. And I feel like getting to the 1,000 subscribers is a fairly major milestone for me and a major checkpoint. So I'm giving myself permission to take it easy for the next little bit. And not a true vacation, obviously. If it was a true vacation, I wouldn't be here. But definitely like giving myself permission to take it a little bit easier for the next little bit. And probably won't be too long. And they'll be back up. Don't worry about it. They'll come on back. Evening, Eric. How you doing, bud? Good to see you. And so, as this is going forward, right, from Rabble, Ignatieff talks up Russian nuclear option in Ukraine. If this doesn't prove to you that the liberals are like manic and insane, right? Here's the quote, right? Michael Ignatieff, the former leader of the Liberal Party. Mr. Putin has already threatened to use nuclear weapons, and if he faces defeat and loss of power, we cannot exclude the possibility that he would use a tactical nuclear strike to hold on through sheer terror. and then suggests the Russians need to understand that if they stage a military incursion across the NATO border, they'll be met by force, and if that fails to hold them, they will be met with nuclear weapons. At first tactical, and then as necessary, strategic too. So Ignatieff is suggesting a first strike against Russia. Did you hear about the Senate passing a bill? I mean, for God's sakes, just do it. Just do it, dude. Like, just do it. I love this. The response I get is they're rebels. Yeah, I've gotten that from a couple of people. I literally just say, like, oh yeah, like the Americans, right? Like the American War of Independence, right? And that's like the end of it. Like, people don't respond after that. Because it's stupid. Like, these people declared their independence. Like, as formally as a group can declare their independence, they declared their independence. Right? And if you declare your independence and then are met with a war, is Donbass a liberation movement? Like, Donbass is a region in Ukraine. The Donetsk and Luhansk region is the larger region, is the Donbass region, and the Donbass military certainly believes it's a militia. It's not really a military; it's a militia. They're fighting in this region, and I mean because they're fighting on an existential line, right? Like, when the coup occurred, these people, as well as the people of Crimea, incidentally, said, we probably don't want to be part of this country. Like, that's scary. Like, oh, Nazis just couped the government we elected. Yeah, I'd like to be independent from that. And the Nazis rolled over and started shelling them. I didn't see the whole thing, the whole address. But yeah, it was like not too different than the rest of the lies that the liberals are propagating, right? Like, as long as you ignore the Donbass war, as long as you ignore the 2014 coup, as long as you ignore, reality and facts on the ground, you can make whatever claim you like. And that's essentially what they've done with Zelensky. And the most embarrassing part about Zelensky as a leader is, like, we're pretending as though he actually has power. Like, he technically has authority, right? He is the president, but nobody's listening to him, right? It's not like he's turning around and, like, telling troops where to go and they actually listen to him, right? Like, I've heard enough high-level officials, both inside of Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, saying that, like, nobody listens to this guy, that I got to start believing that that's the truth, right? Like, and it makes total sense. Like, there are stories coming out now where Zelensky, like, he was elected saying, I want to sue for peace. Like, I want peace. And he gets elected overwhelmingly because everybody in Ukraine wants peace. Like, nobody's interested in this conflict except the Americans, obviously. And he goes to the front line. Remember, there was that picture of him and he was in the battle like armor and it was like spreading around and the Americans were acting like, yeah, he's on the front line, when it was like a picture from a year earlier. Well, that was a picture of him going to the front line to tell the Nazis to disarm. Like, he went to the Donbass region and said to the Nazis there, this ends, stop this, disarm, and they ignored him. Zelensky has no power. Like, nobody listens to him. He has no authority, right? And there's no, like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna, like, arrest people? With who? Who's gonna arrest these guys? Right? Like, the Nazis work directly with NATO. They're working directly with NATO, and NATO is working directly with them. That's the arrangement. And any touching down with Zelensky or any of that kind of stuff is just dealing with the clown, right? And so they've taken the clown and they've put him in front of the Canadian people. And the result, incidentally, of all of this is that Canadians are, like, completely bloodthirsty. Like, we've got 75%, where I've got some kind of poll. Yeah. Oh, yeah, first of all, Elon Musk challenges Vladimir Putin to single combat for Ukraine. Just in case you thought that this guy was serious at all as a person or as an individual or had a brain in his head, was smart at all. Like, this is who Elon Musk actually is, right? Like, this is complete childishness. Like, this is a fucking war There's literally a goddamn war on where people are dying, and this fucking moron thinks it's a good idea to challenge Vladimir Putin in single combat for Ukraine. Like, your position on this is that either he's serious, and in which case he's stupid and insane, or he's turning it into a joke, in which point he's fucking psycho. Like, what a disgraceful thing for a fucking oligarch to say. Like, the guy has hundreds of billions of dollars, for Christ's sakes. And the idea that he's saying that as, like, what, a glib joke? Like, this whole fucking war is just, like, a glib joke for him to meme about? Like, get completely fucked. Like, get completely fucked. What an embarrassing person. Right? That's just cringy bullshit. Like, this idea that, like, he's gonna fucking... Yeah, and what? If Putin is like, no? What? Is Elon gonna be like, he didn't agree to single combat? What a loser. Like, what a fucking unserious person this guy is. No, and obviously Putin would kick this guy's ass. Like, Putin is military. Like, Putin was in the fucking KGB. Like, it wouldn't be close. Like, that's the part that's the best. Like, it wouldn't be close at all. Like, can you imagine? Like, fucking Elon Musk would go in there and be wearing, like, the headgear, right? He'd have, like, the gloves on, be like, all right, and, like, somebody's, like, trying to talk him up, and he, like, puts the mouthpiece in, and fucking Putin's just there, like, in his, like, khaki pants, and he's, like, not wearing a shirt, because Putin loves to walk around without a shirt on, right? And the two would, like, square up, and Putin would fucking own him. It would take 2 seconds. It would take no time at all. Because Putin knows how to fight, and fucking Elon Musk is a dolt. Like, he's just fucking dumbass. Like, this, ugh. Anyway. So, we're getting lots of reports coming in directly from the sources themselves. The mercenary groups that went to Ukraine have been all but destroyed. That... like, the number one thing that is coming back from these mercenary groups is they did not anticipate this level of resistance, which really shows you how much of a dream world these guys are living in, right? Like, they're coming from, like, their military service is like Iraq, where they get to shoot civilians and kids in the streets, right? Like, they don't know what it is to go up against a fucking military. Like an actual military with tanks and jets and helicopters and rockets and shit, right? And the second they showed up, they got blown up, right? They just get blown the fuck away. And here we have the Canadian sniper Wally, dubbed the world's deadliest sniper, is dead. He was killed in 20 minutes. Like, the Western narrative that the Ukrainians can hold out and they're actually winning and they're pushing out the Russians and all this stuff. Like, you got to have a nail in your head at this point to think that that's true. Like, the Russians have already won this thing. At this stage in the game, they're just trying to figure out how many people are going to die before the capitulation occurs. Like, that's really what's going on right now. Like, and the Americans are finding themselves in a position, and the Canadians too, obviously, with this crazed nonsense, this, like, hysterical war rhetoric coming out of Ignatieff, are starting to figure out, like, how do we make this so that this is actually a win for us? And they'll declare victory no matter what happens, right? I'm convinced of it. I keep reading liberal articles saying that Russia is having massive supply and military personnel problem. Is there any article that says otherwise? I mean, you can, like... I highly suggest people go to the Gray Zone YouTube channel and just listen to this what is his name? It's driving me crazy. I gotta actually pull up the clip if they've still got it. The Gray Zone. Yeah, this guy here. Doug McGregor, right? Former top Pentagon advisor, Colonel Doug McGregor. And this guy just lays it out. And, like, I'm listening to him and I'm just like, yeah, sounds pretty accurate. And what the Americans are doing is they're taking Putin's desire not to level the place, because the Americans are like bloodthirsty psychopaths, right? Like, they're so used to just walking into places and blowing it up and just being like, yeah, okay, collateral damage, I guess, whatever, right? Like drone strikes on weddings, right? Like shooting buses, like all this kind of crazed psychopathic nonsense that Westerners do, right? And they're just like, oh, that's what you do in war. Well, Putin doesn't want to do that. He's taking it slow, right? He's slow and steady, because he doesn't want to destroy infrastructure. He doesn't want to just murder civilians, right? And like everything I've seen, by the way, just completely confirms this. Zelensky keeps talking about getting, like, listen to how hysterical this is. Like, listen to the hysteria of that, right? Like this is how you know. This is how you know they're getting desperate, right? That they're getting desperate. They're like, it's the same as like Russia seizes biolabs, which they did. And now the Americans are talking about, oh, get ready for a biological attack, everybody. Get ready for a biological attack. Which, if you're a leftist and you've been paying attention at all, like you paid attention to Syria at all, you know this is a false flag operation. You know that the Americans are going to lie about it. You know that they're going to do this kind of stuff themselves. Is there any way to get RT news through any loophole feeds, websites? Just get yeah, first of all, RT on Odysee, but also you could get what is that called? Like a thing that changes your thing. A thing that changes your location finder. I for the life of me, I cannot think about it. A VLC, a DLC, no, none of that is true. There is a program you can get that changes where your ping is, so your computer believes that you're in a different country. Like, you can use that to get access to, like, if you're in Canada and you got access to Canadian Netflix, but you want access to American Netflix, you can use this program. I know what the term is, and it's just killing me. I can't remember. What is it? What is the program called that changes your IP address? I think it's like an IPN. Is that what it's called? Your IPN? IPN? No. Yeah, it's killing me, dude. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm like hanging it in front of you and being like this, but it definitely exists. Like, what I'm talking about for sure exists, and I'm just completely blanking on what it's called and the name of the thing. It's driving me crazy, but like, that's the way to do it. I have a buddy, he's got one of these. VPN. Yeah, that's what it is. VPN. And it's, you can change your proxy setting. You can pretend like you're in Chicago, right? You can pretend like you're in Alabama. You can pretend like you're in fucking Moscow if you want, right? That'd be one way to do it. And, I mean, so all these guys have left, right, at this stage in the game is hysteria. Is just keep the hysteria going, keep the war propaganda pounding, keep pretending like this is winnable, keep pretending like the Ukrainians are actually going to get a W out of this, even though, like, at this stage in the game, it's just, how much blood do you want to spill? Like, we're getting credible reports coming out of Ukraine saying that the Azov battalion, the Nazis, have taken shelter in Mariupol and basically are using the citizens as hostages. If the citizens attempt to escape Mariupol, they shoot them, right? And so they're using civilians as human shields in Mariupol, right in this region, where the Russians have this all surrounded. Like, the thing with these Nazis is that they know they're fighting to the death. Like, they know they're dead, right? Like, the question is just like, it's just a matter of time for these guys, right? Like, they don't have escape strategies. They don't know what to do or where to turn. Like, if any of these losers thought that NATO was coming for them, like, that's over, right? Like, these guys are like on the last legs. Here in Donetsk, like, this is where the bulk of the fighting is actually happening. Okay, buddy. Look, you got peanut butter. Look how much peanut butter you have. You got so much peanut butter, dude. Go to town. Like, this is where the bulk of the fighting is actually happening. The Russians basically have cut off all supply chains. Like at this stage in the game, everybody's surrounded. Nobody can talk to one another. Nobody can get anything going anywhere. So Zelensky's standing up and being like, "We need a no-fly zone and get some nukes into Ukraine." Like it's just desperation. Like it's just desperation. There's the clip of the American mercenary fleeing the country. He mentioned they destroyed their passports, gave them a rifle with one clip. When he asked for more ammo, he was told to take it off dead Russians. Oh yes, sorry Eric, I blazed by the comment you made. Your dad is a libertarian. I find that lots of conservative types end up saying that they're libertarian because they don't want to be conservatives anymore. You know, that conservatism has become untenable. Like, the whole idea of conservatism is we'll keep this, right? It's in the title, conserve, right? But even conservatives are starting to go, we can't conserve this. Like, it's not possible, right? And so lots of conservatives end up moving off of conservatism onto libertarianism because libertarianism still aligns with conservative values in many ways, but it's the promise of some kind of change or alteration to the system. And fundamentally, like I saw this back in the Occupy Wall Street days with the Tea Party, right? Like these guys blame the government. They think that the problem is the government, and if the government was gone, then everything would be much better. And they believe that because they don't actually have like an understanding of how the capitalist system functions. I keep saying, like, all you really got to do to convince somebody to stop being a libertarian is sit down and play one game of Monopoly with them and be like, okay, let's play libertarianism. Like, this is libertarianism. Look, we all have equal money, right? All things are equal, right? So everything's fair and the rules are fair and all of this fair. Let's see what happens, right? And then you play your game of libertarianism, Monopoly, right? And then at the end of the day, you're just like, look what happened, right? That's libertarianism. Like, this is libertarian capitalism. This is what happens, right? And if they choose not to believe you, then that's on them. But that's the truth. Like, that's what happens. So this, like, the idea that libertarianism will somehow result in a beneficial society where everybody's equal and everybody's rewarded for their hard work exclusively, like, it's just a dream. It's just a dream world. Hey, Seraphim, how you doing? Good to see you. Did you read the Libertarian article? Is this the one you're talking about here, bud? Hold on. Which article are you talking about, bud? Is this the one? Everybody's names are different on Discord, so I never know who's who. Or is it this one? I'm so bad. This is the greatest content of life. Let me know, bud. Is this the one you're talking about? I think I did read this one over. I don't remember exactly what it said. I don't think so, because this is from a comrade. This is essentially arguing that capitalism, like, imperialism is not the highest stage of capitalism, that imperialism is required for capitalism to exist. Like, I think there's something to it. Like, that capitalist societies don't become imperialist. They were imperialist to begin with. And they use that imperialism in order to distribute goods into the wealthy society that pilfers them. Anyway. Earlier in the day, another aide to Zelensky, Ihor Zlovaka, struck a more optimistic note, saying that the negotiations had become more constructive and that Russia had softened its stance by no longer airing its demands that Ukraine surrender. I mean, Putin doesn't care if Ukraine surrenders. Like, really. Like, can you just repost it, Eric? Because I don't want to spend the time sifting through stuff. Like, what Putin wants is he wants Ukraine to acknowledge the Donbass region as independent, acknowledge that Crimea is a Russian state, and promise not to join NATO. Like, that's it. If they agree to those terms, I think Putin will happily agree. The anti-war one. Oh, so this one up here. Oh yeah, I think I had this one. Yeah, I had this one over here ready to go. It's a bit long, so I'm not going to read it out loud. But it's like fairly close. Like, this is the thing, is like, one of the things that's kind of shocking about what's happening in American politics right now is like, it's the Democrats that are like, rah, rah, war, let's go to war, let's blow the place up. Right? Like, it's the Biden Democrats who are pounding the pulpit on this. And yeah, Zelensky's address in Parliament, it was just like pro-war, like, nonsense. Like, I really think that if you were listening, like, he's a fucking clown. Like, if you were really listening to this guy and taking this guy seriously and like being like, what a historic address, just like, Jesus Christ. Like, we're a very lost people. We're a very lost people. And like, nothing indicates that more than the fact that it's the liberals who are fucking bloodthirsty maniacs in this. Right? It's the liberals that are pounding the pulpit. It's the liberals that are walking, that are working as the like bloodthirsty, crazed maniacs. Right? Like, the Republicans are the ones that are saying like, why are we trying to go to war with Putin? And for simply standing up and asking the question, why are we going to war with Putin? They're accused of being like simps for Putin, and that they're like in bed with, like, no wonder American politics is so fucking terrible, right? If you stand up and say like, hey, we should be buddies with Russia, instead of saying, hey, we should treat them like they're gonna destroy us at any moment or any of this, like, you get called a simp for them. And it's just like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, oh no, we want to treat another nation with respect and dignity. Oh no, we want to actually do trade, and we actually don't want to foment war against them, right? But again, I'm more or less of the opinion that this is more just the it's the cult acting like the cult acts, right? That it's the Democrats' turn to be the bloodthirsty maniacs, right? And the Republicans are in the position where they're playing the doves, because that's their role in all of this. And if Trump was the president during all of this, they would, if Trump was the president during all of this, then it would be the Republicans pounding the pulpit against Putin, and it would be reversed. And Rachel Maddow would be the big, like, we gotta care about Putin, and the Republicans would be saying, oh, it's just more liberal snowflakes and wokeism and all that shit, right? So like, it's like we're watching a pendulum just go back and forth, and all of the politicians know their parts and know their lines, right? Everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and if you don't, then you get put in line, right? Like, if you're like an AOC type, well, we know who pays AOC, right? Like, we know what goes on, and this, like, so you can't really have legitimate politics in this society and under these circumstances. Like, if you stand up and say like very simple shit, like, I have literally disseminated like a CIA leaked document, or a WikiLeaks document that's leaked by the ambassador to Russia, who is now currently the head of the CIA, head director of the CIA, William Burns, and he's basically writing like, yeah, what we're doing in Ukraine is going to lead to a war with Russia. Like, that's what the ambassador to Russia wrote. And if you disseminate that, you're called a Russian propagandist and a Putin simp. It's just like, you can't have an intelligent adult conversation anymore. Like, you're not allowed, right? You got to just pick your team, and if you don't rah-rah for that team, you're over. Oh, Eric, it's too big, dude. Look at how long this is. Like, I'm not going to read through this whole thing on stream. Look at this. Like, boom, dude, boom. Like, I'm even like, Here, I agree with you, though. It's a good article. Lots of really good information in this article. Here. But, like, one of the things that I think is really worth putting forward in this conversation is, like, we're still acting like it's the 1960s. We're still acting like the democratic structure that exists here in America is the same democratic structure that we like learned about in school and like in the 70s or the civil rights movement or any of this kind of stuff. We're still acting as though there is such a thing as principles, right? Or there is such a thing as a principled position or any of that kind of shit. Literally, it's oligarchs. Like that's literally what's going on. And the politicians that are in power are actors. Exclusively. They're not there to actually enact anything. They're not there to do anything. They're not there to change anything. Those people are fucking actors. Justin Trudeau, I've got an article over here, right? Canada's Liberals are letting the wealthy write their own tax policy. Yeah, because the Liberals are actors, right? Like, just like the Conservatives, just like the NDP. Like, they're not politicians. They're not actually interested in learning anything about policy or learning anything about governance or learning anything about that. That's not their role. That's not what they do, right? Like, and all of these Republicans, all of these Democrats, all of these liberals, all of these conservatives, every single one of them, they're actors. And maybe they said something off camera one time that somebody's taking and putting in an article, or maybe they're doing this, that. But the reality is that they let the wealthy do what they want. They basically take the legislation that's handed to them by wealthy people and they pass it. They don't read it, right? They're not interested in reading it. That every so often you find a politician who actually thinks he's a politician instead of an actor, saying like, we haven't even read this legislation, we're voting on it. And he's like, he's the clueless idiot who hasn't figured out that he's just an actor, right? Like literally they're hired to be a face in front of a camera exclusively. That's their whole role, right? It's WWE entertainment, right? And like, that didn't disappear because there's a war on. In fact, it just got more heightened. It just got more obvious that, like, the divide that exists between the Republicans and the Democrats is strictly performative. And just like I said, if the roles were reversed, if it was Trump in power, like if this whole thing had blown up while Trump was in office, the roles would be reversed. Right? And Trump would be standing up there being like, we've got to stop Putin, Vladimir, he's so scary, he's very, very sharp, very intelligent, we've got to take him seriously, right? And it would be fucking Rachel Maddow being like, now wait a minute, hasn't NATO been doing something, in that region for a little while? Well, are we just going to take President Trump's a word for it, and it'd be fucking Tucker Carlson like banging. Like they're actors. Like it's all performance. There's no politics. There's no morality. There's no ethics. There's no consideration. There's no thought. They take their lines and they read them verbatim. Rachel Maddow didn't sit down and think and like write out a thing and say. She literally walks into the office with her latte. They do her makeup. She sits in front of the fucking camera, right? And she reads the lines. And she's cold reading, right? She's quite good at cold reading, right? But she doesn't have, like, an ethos. She doesn't have ethics or morale. Like, if she was a robot, if suddenly, like, one day Rachel Maddow was reading her lines and something went wrong and her eyes started to twitch and then, like, her faceplate fell off and it turned out she was just a robot, I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, none of the politicians that you see on TV are meaningful. They don't matter. There's a reason I don't really report on them, because they're actors, right? And I feel like we forget that. And I feel like we have forgotten that people are literally walking around being like, oh, wow, Joe Biden's really taken this position. And did you hear what Trump said? And like all this kind of stuff, as if any of it fucking matters at all. And I outright just like refuse to report on this WWE entertainment as if it's valid or interesting, right? There are lots of people who do that, right? I consider them just as valuable and just as interesting as the people who are writing articles about the WWE. You can find them, right? Like it's a little sports game, or like people who are doing it about football or basketball, right? It's just politics ball. Like that's all it is. Except the difference is that when somebody scores a point in basketball, it actually has like a meaningful difference to what happens in the structure of the game, Whereas in politics, like, nothing really changes. Like, they're all in cahoots. They work for the same people, and they know they do. Like, and I don't know why we're pretending like this isn't the case. And I think the only thing that still convinces people in some small measure that, oh, this has any validity whatsoever, is that every so often there's like one person who sparks up for just like a moment, and it's just like believable enough that we all look at them and go, oh, this person actually might be interested in being a politician instead of an actor. And but at the end of the day, like, we saw this with Bernie Sanders, as clear as day. Like, the guy sparked up and was like, socialism, Medicare for all, poverty, like, and he's shining a light on all of these things. But when push came to shove, he voted with the Democrats because he's a fucking actor, right? And he's playing like the Hulk Hogan role, like he's the hero role, right? The purpose of someone like Bernie Sanders standing up and acting this way and being like this is to funnel energy into the dead end. That's the goal, is to convince more and more people that this system, that is this fake pretend system, can actually result in anything beneficial for anyone, when the point of it is explicitly to maintain power for the oligarch class. And like, they know how to do it. They've been doing it for centuries. Like, they know how to maintain power in the wealth of the nation, which is the point of the whole operation. And so, like, when people hand me articles to be like, oh, did you hear what Trump, or did you hear what, like, it does, they don't matter. Like, they literally don't matter. Like, they take cue cards and read them, and that's what they do. Like, the only thing that is interesting to report on in any of that is what people think, right? Is what the so if I see like a poll, come on, I had a poll right in front of my face. Yeah, if a poll comes around, right? Like, this is interesting. What do people think about these fake, non-existent, like, actors who are pretending to be politicians, right? That's something worth reporting on, right? But the reality is, like, so here's a brutal poll for the Alberta's Conservatives, right? That indicates a, like, cultural shift. It indicates a certain lack of trust for the Conservative Party, right? Tells the oligarch class, what does it tell the oligarch class? It will get on side with the NDP more, right? And when the NDP have been in office, and how did they act? Like the Conservatives. Like, the only time the oligarch class will actually allow something to occur is if it's an existential threat for them. That's it, right? So they're going to attempt to privatize and move forward with all that kind of stuff with the NDP, and the NDP will probably just go along with it because they're part of the game, right? And, like, I didn't see anything come out of Rachel Maddow that convinced me she was different than the Conservatives in any meaningful way. Like, that everybody in the political power structure knows where the power lies, and they work for those guys because they're fucking actors. Like, that's all it is. And so, like, I feel like I gotta remind people of this, that we seem to have forgotten because because there's a war on all of a sudden, right? Like, there's this big Ukrainian war, big explosions and all this kind of stuff, and we all turn to Biden and, like, the Democrats, and they do their speeches, and we turn to the liberals, and they've done their speeches, and we're like, okay, they're the leaders. No, they're fucking not. They're actors. They're just fucking actors. Like, no one listens to them. No one gives a shit what Biden thinks. Like, as long as he signs the document that's put in front of him, he gets to be the president. Like, that's what's happening. Like, there's an oligarchy here, right? Like, your Musks and your Gates and your Bezoses, but far more importantly, your Chases and your Morgans and your Rothschilds and your Rockefellers, right? Those are far more important, right? And, like, what those guys think matters a million times more, right? I'm way more interested in reporting on what the Rockefellers think about shit, because that actually matters. Right? Like, what the Rockefellers think about what should be done in the society matters. What Biden thinks is fucking irrelevant. Like, if the Rockefellers walked up to Joe Biden and said, here's the legislation, pass it, Biden's going to go, okay, and he's going to do it. Like, so I just felt like I needed to go on that fucking rant because to remind myself as well, like, don't get drawn in by the show. It exists for a reason, right? It's a show, and it's supposed to draw you in, because if it draws you in, then it draws you away from the actual center of power, right? And the fucking White House and the democracy, it's not the center of power. That's like the banks are the center of power. Like, the Federal Reserve has far more power than fucking the Congress does. Like, anyway. Brandon's saying, if you try to have a conversation, you get canceled. Yeah, I got banned from a wolf group, which I'm sure he would be sad to see his name on at this point. Yeah, I've been banned from communism Reddits, anti-fascist Reddits, like... Basically, everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid at this point. Like, it really is. It can only be described as a hysteria. That if you stand up and say very, like, clear things. Like, I've gotten to the point now where I'm only willing to say, like, one sentence and it has to be sourced. Like, the source needs to be in the sentence. I can't just say things, right? And even then, I get banned, right? I finally got banned from Our Canada, and I literally, all I did was post the article that I've shown you guys many times that we've been funding Nazis, right? Like, that's literally all I did, and I got banned for it. So, like, it's in, man. Like, the hysteria is there. The subreddits that have been taken over by assets and things like this, they're just cleansing it, clearing people out, and it's all to just control the narrative, right? Which they're happy to do, right? Because they understand that that's the power, right? Like, if the populace suddenly realized, like, if everybody all at once was just like, wait a minute, Donbass war, right? Things would change. It would happen immediately, right? But you can just not tell people. Like, that's it. You just don't tell them. And then they don't know. And they act the way that they're acting. Because people are, like, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but, like, they're ignorant. They don't know what's going on. And I don't say ignorant to be dismissive of them. Like, everybody's fucking busy as shit, and, like, life is grinding away at them. They're working 3 jobs trying to fucking pay rent that keeps going up while there's inflation going on, all this crazy shit, right? To also then turn around and say to them, you should know what's going on in politics, when there's this, like, layer of falseness where, like, actors like Trudeau are supposed to be the leader, but they don't. They're the most irrelevant people in the conversation. Like, who gives a fuck what Justin Trudeau thinks about literally any subject? Like, he's a walking haircut that's literally come out in front of us wearing blackface. Like, who gives a fuck about this guy? And it's amazing that there's anybody in the world that's just like, oh, he's so dreamy. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? NATO hasn't fought a war with an industrialized military since World War II. They're used to fighting factions with small arms, not a modern disciplined army. Yeah, like, that's the big difference with what's going on in Ukraine and why it's so scary for white people. And like, these mercenary groups got blown right out of the fucking water, right? Like, absolute shellacking for these guys. Like, they showed up expecting it to be like Iraq, where they're, like, you know, shooting, you know, women and children and, like, you know, like, old men and shit, right? They don't have tanks or heavy ordnance or any of that kind of stuff. And they showed up and they just get blown up. Like, instantly. These guys just got blown the fuck up. And, like, I'm hearing stories. Like, here's a video.
Who are wondering what is going on. Alright. We were part of the Georgia National Legion, the 102nd Ukrainian Territorial Defense. Okay? Our base got fucked up. The base right next to us got fucked up. Americans, British, tons of British dead. Alright? They're not saying nothing. They're counting our dead as their dead. They're trying to send us to Kiev with no fucking weapons, no kit, no fucking plates. The people who are lucky enough to get weapons are only getting magazines with like 10 fucking rounds, okay? When they wanted to send us to Kiev, we said no. Our whole group, a bunch of Americans, Canadians, British. So they told us we had to get the fuck out or they were going to shoot us in the back. All right. So me, this British guy, and another American, we fucking hid in the back of an ambulance to get out. We got to the border, and it was a whole nother mess. When you get to the border, anyone who has kit, anyone who has any military shit, they're fucking pulling you out of the line and they're sending you back to the front. We got dropped off about 5 clicks from the fucking from the border, and we walked. And we get to the border, and this humanitarian group with a bunch of ex-SF veterans from England pull us to the side and say, you need to get, like, pulled us out and fucking, like, hit us. And they were like, you need to dump all your kit. They're pulling people out, cutting up passports, sending them back. So we dumped our shit. We got, like, in all of our fucking, we got in, like, Red Cross vests, and they had, like, fucking humanitarian passes to get us through the Ukrainian border. People need to stop coming here. It's a trap, and they're not letting you fucking leave.
Right? Like, it's all just a show for the Americans, for North America, right? Like, we send our boys over there. Oh, our good Canadian boys are going on over there. They're gonna fight against the Ukrainians. Can you fucking imagine what it must be like to be one of these fucking dupes? To be one of these guys who genuinely thought, we're gonna go over there, we're gonna fight for Ukraine, right? We're gonna fight these Russians against Ukraine. Can you imagine what that would look like for you, right? That you've swallowed the bullshit pill to the highest possible degree, right? It doesn't get higher than I'm gonna go fight Russians in Ukraine, right? If you're going to Ukraine to shoot at Russians, get those Ruskies, right? You've swallowed the pill whole, right? Like, whoa. Imagine volunteering for that shit. And then you go down to Ukraine, right? You walk in there, right? Expecting some kind of like formal military and like some kind of thing. And who do you encounter? Oh, Nazis. The place is loaded with Nazis. All of the photos and everything that's coming out of, even when NATO takes pictures of these guys, they got the black sun emblem on them. So how quick do you think it would take you? How fast do you think the turnaround would be from you landing in Ukraine, being like, okay, let's get ready to fight these Russians, to like looking around and being like, oh shit, these guys are Nazis. Like, how long do you think that would take? Like, when's the ping? When does it go ping in your brain? I think it happens in the first 5 minutes. Like, I literally think the moment you start interacting with these Nazis, you realize very quickly that they're Nazis, right? Because there's always that rumor off on the side, right? There's no way you've made it to this point without some kind of rumor hitting you. Well, like the Azov Battalion and all this kind of stuff. And you're sitting there being like, oh, yeah, okay. Every military has some kind of, like, darker element. I've been in the military for a while, right? I've seen military operations. Every platoon has like a Nazi here and there, right? Which that's the narrative I get from liberals. Like, oh, what you're so complained about the Azov Battalion, all this kind of, well, what about the Wagner group? We found a Nazi. We found one Nazi in the entire Russian military. And there's a rumor that he might actually be controlling a mercenary group somewhere that Putin maybe used that one time, possibly. That's the same as literally Nazis are in control of Ukraine. That's the same, right? And so you're a military man, you roll into Ukraine, and literally you're there, you've got your gun, you got your kit, you got all your shit, and you're looking at these guys, you're going, oh fuck, these are Nazis. How long? How long do you think it takes you? If it takes you longer than 5 minutes, then you're not like a trustworthy... Like, once your boots are on the ground and you're seeing what's what, and you're talking to people, you're seeing the black sun badge everywhere, you're seeing the fucking swastika on people, right? Like, how long do you think it would take you? So, not only do I think that the Foreign League, right? Not only do I think it got blown up because it faced like a real military, like instead of like, you know, shooting children in the streets the way they usually do, instead of doing that, I think that these guys just bailed the second they arrived because they realized, oh shit, these are Nazis. I'm out. Not what I signed up for, dude. I'm gone. Right? Like, the level of propaganda and the propaganda wall is so thick that I'm sure a lot of these, I'm sure this Canadian sniper showed up thinking, hey, I'm going to show up and fight, the Russians who are unprovokingly attacking Ukrainians, and we got to protect these innocent Ukrainians. How long do you think it took this guy? He was only there for 20 minutes before he got killed. Do you think in that 20 minutes he realized he was fighting for Nazis? How quick do you think it was? I think it was fast. Like, I don't think it would take you much time at all, honestly. The second you're in the group, you like, if you can't put together, like, oh fuck, like, not only are all of these guys wearing Nazi paraphernalia and Nazi symbolism, the guy that's leading them is, and the guy he's taking orders from is as well. And they're saying, oh, that's a Nazi slogan that they're saying. Oh, there's the Hitler salute, which they openly do. Like, I don't think it would take you very long at all, dude. And, like, I feel bad for these guys. I actually do. Like, I think that a lot of them went down there thinking, like, we're going to fight the good fight. Some of them are just straight up mercenaries and all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of these guys showed up thinking, we're going to fight the good fight. Nazis. Oh, shit. I sure wish my my media actually told me about this. I sure wish my own military told me about this. Right? Like, think of the level of outright delusion that these guys, like, boom, just like ran straight into, dude. And those stories are going to start coming out. Like, that's what's going to absolutely decimate this whole thing, man. Like, stories of, like, military personnel who are like, I volunteered to go in there and they were fucking Nazis. Like, unbelievable. They say idolizing politicians is the same as thinking the stripper really likes you. Yeah, exactly. That's a very similar relationship, right? Would love to see Abby Martin versus Rachel Maddow in a mud wrestling match. Abby would mop the floor with her, although Abby had a kid recently, and that's really softened her up, I gotta say. Like 5 years ago, Abby Martin, I'd tell you that Abby Martin would take Rachel Maddow to the mat, but now she's like got the motherly thing going on, so she's a little softer, I think. Although that could also like harden her up in a big way. Like moms can sometimes be like get fucked, right? So I'd be rooting for Martin for sure, though. But Maddow seems scrappy. Who's got the height advantage? How tall is Rachel Maddow? Yeah, we're doing it. Oh, shut up. 1.8 meters. How many feet is 1.8 meters? She's 5'9". She's almost the same height as I am. That's pretty good. How tall is Abby Martin? How tall is Abby Martin? Height not available. Abby Martin was shown that 6 foot. Yeah, I think she's probably. Oh, here we go. 5'5". The bad news for Abby. Man. Height advantage counts. Like if you can get a couple inch range advantage, that's tough. Tough for Abby Martin because Maddow's no pushover, man. If you ask me, like she looks fit, she looks strong, right? I think it will come down to who's hungrier for it. Right? Who's hungrier for it? What are the stakes? Cotton, how you doing, bud? Perhaps they're trying to use the Ukrainian war as a distraction for something way more serious. The new the BA2 variant, which is spreading like wildfire in China. Really? So much going on. BA2 variant, China. Wow, they have China. That's surprising to see because China has been very, very virulent. Stealth Omicron variant drives multiple outbreaks in China. China banned most people from leaving, yeah. We're all fucked, man. We're all totally fucked. I'm reading credible reports that are saying that what some of the side effects, some of the side effects in the of COVID are like mental health concerns, right? So we literally have like reports coming out saying that like lead from gasoline is an intelligence concern, right? Lowers the IQ of people, and then you got COVID going through. Lowering the IQ of people. We're North America is just going to turn into a bunch of dumb morons. that it wouldn't matter what kind of like system we had in place. We're all just going to be like idiocracy. We're all just going to be like, I mean, I guess so. Duh. Like, that's what we're going to be. Jen Zedong is the only communist subreddit. I am so concerned about Jen Zedong, dude, in the midst of all of this. I think the thing that's saving them is that they really clamp down on any kind of violent talk. Like, and that's by policy. Like, so the moderators are basically like, no, you're not bringing up guillotines, bud. Like, that's out of here, right? Because that was the excuse they used to knock off the Chapo boys, the Chapo subreddit that existed. And so that's got Jen Zedong being very like, nope, like, no, not to the wall, like none of that. 0% tolerance for any of that. And I think that's probably the only thing that's saving them at this point, because I guarantee that the powers that be would absolutely love to see Jen Zedong gone, right? They would love to see Jen Zedong gone. Was he tricked? I mean, as we're all being tricked. It's Admiral, it's a trap. Like, we are not being told what's going on in there, man. Like, everybody's being tricked. Like, the people that the 75% of respondents who are saying like, I had a poll here. Something like 70% of respondents are saying that they want NATO to intervene in Ukraine, right? And the only reason you're saying that, literally the only reason you're saying that is because you've been tricked. You don't know what's going on in Ukraine if you're saying that. Can you post that video in the chat? I'd like to listen to it again. Which video, bud? Sorry, I'm a bit behind. Is it this one? You have this one. Or is it, well, we should do the number. Let me know what video you're talking about, dude. Sorry. Oh, you're talking about, shoot, I literally just closed it. No. History. Is it this one? Nope. I literally just closed it. Yeah, here we go. But the thing I like about Jen Zedong, man, is like they're really on point. They're really point. Yeah, Dr. John Campbell, I don't really pay that much attention to the COVID stuff. I never have. Like, I am of the opinion that I will do what the doctors and nurses tell me to do, right? Yeah, love the Zelensky dropping the glory to Ukraine line in his address. Yeah, no Nazism in Ukraine, right? Nothing going on. I saw a great quote, which was, it's weird that like people will dismiss like 10% of the Ukrainian military being Nazi. Doesn't mean the Ukrainian military is Nazi, but if there's one Jew, it means they can't possibly be anti-Semites, right? Yep, it was reported that Italians loading humanitarian aid boxes found weapons inside boxes, refused to load them. Plane was bound for USA base in Poland. Yeah, that's classic. That's classic behavior from the United States, right? They didn't accept our humanitarian aid. What monsters! Meanwhile, the humanitarian aid is like literally beeping. There's like the humanitarian aid is like a perfect sphere with like a fuse burning down it, right? Like, it's like literally written on the side of the box, totally not a bomb, right? Like, it's so obvious that this is what the United States does. All right, we're doing the number. Nova Scotia's already in with a 4. We got an 8 from Harry.
Here we go for today's number. It's March 15.
Here we go. We got an 8 from Harry. We got a 4. I'm going with a 10. Haven't hit my 10 yet,
10
man.
10 balls. Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10.
Numbers 1 through 10.
Swirl
the numbers. We got a 5 from Branwyn. Another 4. Doubling down on those 4s. That's what I like to see.
Pick
Double
a
down.
number.
Not too many people drawing numbers today.
Today's number is 4.
Hey! Continent at the last minute. I'll say that's fine. We tripled down on the 4. Let's go. Let's go, Brandon. We did it. We did it. May the energy of David Lynch carry with you into your lives. May your spirits be blessed by the angel of David Lynch. I don't feel bad because somehow we do bare minimum have to draw a line between victimhood and personal responsibility. They have chosen to fight. That's extremely adult. That's true, but I just feel bad for them because I think that they don't have all the information. Like they literally think that they're going in there to fight the good fight against like aggressors, and like that's just not what's happening. Like it's just not what's going on, and I think these guys are figuring it out pretty fucking quickly. Like pretty fucking quickly. So I mean this right here, right? Like the world's deadliest sniper is dead, killed by Russian special op forces. Just 20 minutes, dude. Like think about that. Like they saw that guy coming from a mile away, dude. That's really what it comes down to. Like this they knew that this guy, right? That North America and Canada and everybody were looking at this guy, and they were trying to turn this guy into like a big story, right? They wanted, the Russians knew that NATO and her allies in Canada, like Russia knows that in the West they're losing the narrative, right? They have to know. Like it's impossible not to know. And a guy like this showing up, like how many kills would he have to get before he became like a legend, front page news, interviews all the time, right? Like not that many. He wouldn't have to be that effective, right? And he's like a Canadian, right? Like English speaker, going in there, and he'll read the cue cards. He'll be an actor, right? He'll do all this stuff, right? Say whatever people want. The Russians saw this guy coming from a mile away. And they were just like, yeah, we're going to make sure that guy dies, like straight away. And they did. He's out, right? He's sniping Jesus now. Meanwhile, Zionism in Ukraine, right? We're getting pretty credible information showing that a Zionist legion has gone into Ukraine now. So you have Zionists and Nazis working together. A match made in heaven, honestly. Watch Trudeau try and give this Jack Loon a posthumous medal. Yeah, hero of the people. Yeah, oh yeah. I'm waiting for it, dude. I am. Like, I'm really waiting for it. They're gonna. This is all a show. Like, this is all just a show, right? That they're trading in Ukrainian blood for political advantage. Like, that's what's happening. And if Ukraine was actually in charge of its own fate, they would have stopped by now. Like, what are the Ukrainians even fighting for? Like, really? What is it that the Ukrainians are actually fighting for at this stage in the game? Because Putin isn't even saying, like, I want to take over Ukraine. Like, he's not interested in that. He's been very clear about that, right? He's doing everything he can to stay out of fields, to not destroy infrastructure, right? Like, everywhere he goes, he's spreading goods wherever he goes. Right? Like, he's doing everything he can to make sure that he's hitting military targets. Like, to the point where I was wondering why there wasn't more aerial bombardment being used. And then I listened to an interview by this military fella, and he said Putin doesn't have precision targeting systems, right? The Russians are actually behind militarily on this, that they don't have precision aerial targeting systems. So if they drop a bomb, right, it can be off by several meters, right? Like up to like 12, 15 meters. And if you're trying to do precision bombing, 12 meters is a lot. That's a lot of space. And so they're just choosing not to do it, right? They're literally just saying like, yeah, if we can't actually hit the target from the air, then we're just not going to use the air. So the only aerial bombardment that they've used this entire time was just to knock out the Ukrainian air systems, right? Like get rid of their jet fighters, get rid of their airports and things like this, so that the Ukrainians couldn't take to the sky. And then from there, they've just been using far more precise artillery fire, and that takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time to move in that way, which the Americans are acting like, oh, they're really taking their time. They must be meeting a lot of resistance. It's like, no, well, the resistance is that they don't want to blow the fucking place apart, right? Honestly, though, that's on my view a consequence of Western culture being so damn sure of its own moral mythology. Yeah, please don't do something brave if you really don't have all the facts. Well, but I mean, like, can you imagine? Like, this is my big thing, dude. Like, this is a lie of omission. Like, this is how insane this lie. Like, people don't know about an 8-year-long war in the Donbass region by fucking Nazis. Like, if you don't know that, right? And if nobody's telling you that, there's all kinds of stuff that you don't know, right? You're just a fucking cog in it, right? Yeah, the Russians are trying to preserve evidence. There's that side of it as well. Like, I think that they're not interested in just shelling the place to hell and letting people, like, in terms of narrative control, I think the Russians are really, really banking on the long game on this one. Like, there's been pretty credible rumblings that Putin is probably going to retire after this, right? That after this military kind of thing, he's basically going to say, okay, I'm hanging it up and moving it on to somebody else, which, you know, makes sense, right? Change the face of the organization. Hopefully that bolsters the opinion of the whole project again. Pretty common to do that. But like the Russians' whole claim to any of this is we were fighting Nazis. And if you just blow up everything, like, you know, the street names named after Nazis, the statues erected in the name of Nazis, right? The whole Stepan Bandera movement, right? That whole thing. At this stage in the game, though, there's so much photographic evidence. Like, the Azov Battalion itself has done, like, a really good job of documenting itself, right? Like, that's something that I think people don't really get about the Azov Battalion. Is, like, these guys are not, like, pretending, right? They're not, like, being stealth about it. They're being very open about it. Like, they've held major parades. They did like a whole, like, a Nazi ritual, and they filmed it all with drones. Like, if you watch some of these documentaries about the Donbass War, like, you can see this footage that the Azov Battalion themselves filmed. So, like, at this stage, to deny it is just like, it's just brain rot. It's just fucking brain rot. How could any liberal, this is from Jamu Baraka, how could any liberal who claims to believe in freedom of thought and free exchange of ideas support YouTube's removal of Oliver Stone's documentary on Ukraine? The answer, liberals are hypocrites who really never believed in those values. They are the driving force of fascism. Yeah. Like, this is where we're at. Like, this is where we're at. And I feel like what they're doing to Ukraine, they'll do to us. Like, they don't give a fuck. Right? Like, and I mean that. Like, they don't give a fuck. Like, if we're all thrown out into the streets in poverty, we can't pay rent, we can't do any of that kind of stuff, tough shit. Get fucked. Like, that is what they are saying to us. And, like, people are just not putting it together. To be honest, that would be a smart move, but then again, I don't see a viable successor to Putin. I think his retirement could open a door to the Communist Party gaining some ground again in Russia. They have been gaining ground already. Like, the leaders of the opposition, like the people who are in the opposition position, are the old guard Stalinists, right? And like the communists, like the old guard communists. So it's completely possible that Russia will begin moving that way again seriously. Yeah, they are after the biggest opposition party to the United Russia. Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of... We'll see, though. Like, I mean, Putin is in, like, an oligarch class, right? And there's, like, a group of them, and one of them could stand up, like fucking Mike Bloomberg did, right? Mike Bloomberg, like, threw his hat into the ring, and the United States basically just said, no, we don't actually want to be ruled directly by an oligarch. Use a surrogate. Actors, please. That's essentially what the whole fucking democracy in the United States is. It's just deciding whether or not we're going to be ruled directly by them or by their surrogates. Like, that's essentially what we're choosing. And if the Russians were smart, they'd start doing the same thing, honestly. Like, find a popular Russian, find some actor, right, and just thrust him in front of us, and we'll all be like, oh, it's that pretty actor I saw on TV, right? Like, just like fucking Donald Trump. Right? Oh, it's that actor guy. He said you're fired. You know what I'd really like somebody to do to all these politicians is fire them. That guy fires people. You're fired. Go. Right? That's Donald Trump. Like Ronald Reagan, Justin Trudeau, Zelensky. Right? They're all just fucking actors. Right? Like they're not real. Like they don't give a fuck. They cut the middleman out with Trump, and the liberals didn't like that at all. It exposed the game too clearly for all to see. Yeah, but even then, people, the rabid, this is the thing that's so crazy to me. Like, if everybody had voted on Trump and been like, we're going to put Trump in there because fuck these guys, right? Which is what I kind of initially thought it all was. It's just everybody being like, fuck all these guys. Yeah, fuck you, Donald Trump. Eat it. Right? And I saw some interviews with people who were talking that way, right? People who were like, yeah, I don't care about Donald Trump, but like, fuck this whole thing, right? Like, fuck these guys, fuck these guys. If Donald Trump's going to say fuck these guys, I'm going to vote for that guy because fuck this whole thing, right? And it's like, respectable, right? This is a respectable position to take. Like, it's Donald Trump, his rise through the ranks to become the leader of that party decimated the old guard neocons, right? Like, literally decimated them to the point now where they're like trying to run like Lynn Cheney, and she's going to be like a fifth stringer who's going to get booted out right away. Like, you're talking about like Jeb Bush, right? Jeb Bush, like, before Donald Trump showed up, Jeb Bush was considered like a very credible, likely leader of the Republican Party. And then Donald Trump showed up and it just destroyed it. He didn't even get more than 5%. Like, decimation. Right? Like, that's as if like Hillary Clinton showed up and only got 5% of the vote in the Democratic Party. Like, it was a decimation. And that's what people wanted to do. They wanted Donald Trump to come in and fucking decimate everything. And he was playing that game, dude. He was talking shit on these guys. He was laying it all out. But then, like, he gets into power and, like, obviously doesn't act that way. Like, he's not obviously decimating anything, right? He's completely just playing the game. And I don't get why people have this, like, rabid love for him right now. Like, that's the thing that blows me away the most. Is that there's, I can respect saying, like, yeah, Donald Trump, off you go, fuck it all up. And then, like, once it's over, you're like, okay, like, moving on. Right? Fucking moving on. But people are just like really hung up on him, man. And they're just like in love with it. Like they're just like, Donald Trump's my jam. And I'm like, really? Like, I always viewed Donald Trump as like a summer fling, right? As like the American populace basically taking like like throwing a stone in the whole thing and basically saying, get fucked. And like, once they had the fling, everybody would move on. But I think that Donald Trump unlocked something for people where, and the thing that I'm worried that Donald Trump really unlocked for people is that it's okay to be cruel. I think that's what it truly boils down to. Like, yeah, the QAnon crowd running for the Republican Party, yeah, it's this insane, unpredictable wild card, completely detached. All of that stuff is true. The Democrats are just as detached. Like, they're just as detached. They're just detached in a way that isn't so, like, Yosemite Sam, right? Like, Yosemite Sam is literally like, yeehaw, bam, bam, yeah, there's reptiles ruling the White House, yeehaw, boom, boom, boom. But, like, Democrats are just as unhinged. Like, when they talk about Russiagate, when they talk about, when they talk about Donald Trump, right? Like, they're unhinged lunatics who espouse the most brutal conspiracy theories that are still around. Like, Russiagate is playing, man. Like, it's playing really hard today, right? Like and there's literally no evidence for it. There's like literally no evidence of this collusion that they're talking about, and yet we're all supposed to just be like, yeah, the Democrats are the reasonable ones in the room, and I'm like, are they? I don't think so. Like, they seem just as Looney Tunes. It's just that when they talk like this. We have credible evidence to show that Mr. Trump has been involved with Mr. Putin for quite some time. Like, that's how they talk. Like, is it any different than being like, we think that reptiles have taken over the White House? We have credible evidence to show that the frogs are turning gay, that blood is turning everybody into vampires, and if we don't do something about it, the moon will fall into the earth. No, I don't believe in climate change. Next question. Like, at least the Republicans are being like, I don't care about climate change. Boom, 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 boom. While the Democrats are like, we must do something about climate change at some point. We don't know what to do about it, so we're not going to do anything at all. But we acknowledge that it's real. And that should be good enough for you guys. Like, at least the neocons, you knew where they stood. Yeah, they were evil, but in a very predictable way. That's right. That's right. And like, this is the thing that blows me away about these modern conservatives. Like the Andrew Scheers and the Aaron O'Toole's and the Stephen Harpers even. Like, just lie, man. Just, I don't know what's, like, why these guys can't figure this out. Like, we love being lied to. Like, we love it. Like, a big part about why I actually think that this whole Ukrainian myth and lie is still being perpetrated is that they, I think Canadians like being lied to. I think they're looking at the Liberals and looking at these Conservatives and NDP and being like, oh, yeah, it's bullshit, but, you know, that's what we like. Like, there's no sense of audaciousness. There's no sense of, like, this guy's a fucking liar. Let's get rid of this guy. Like, it really is just like, wow, he is lying so well. Look at how well he's lying. Absolutely. Doug Ford, for sure, right? Like, there's like this sense of awareness that exists within the Canadian public of like we know Justin Trudeau is full of shit. Like, we know. And we love it. We just love it. And so my advice to these conservatives as they're coming up to try and challenge, just start lying. Tell enormous lies. Huge fucking lies. We love it. We absolutely love it. And the media's not going to do anything. Like, they're not there to try to counter any of that. They're not going to attempt at all. What's up, buddy? What's up? You want to come up? You want to say hello to the people? No, you don't want to say hello to the people. You're shy. Yes, you are. You're shy. I've come around a lot to the blue QAnon, the blue anon expression with the escalation of this Russiagate paranoia. Well, and in my opinion, the Russiagate stuff is far more devastating. Like if you actually believe the Russiagate stuff, like, look at what's happening in Ukraine. Like, that's where you end up if you believe in this Russiagate stuff. Like, if you're a conspiracy nut on that, then you're gonna go to fucking war, and you're gonna blow the shit out of stuff. If you're a QAnon person, like if you believe that kind of stuff, then the shit that you're doing is like small scale, like insurrections, and we're gonna get 200 guys and like storm the White House and make a big scene, right? Like the conspiracy shit that has led the Democrats into a fairly major conflict, right? Like the conspiracy shit that exists in the Republican Party is like, let's go Brandon, like that's where they've ended up. So you tell me, like, which one should I be more concerned about? Yeah, we see and hear climate change. Yeah, but since when are we supposed to believe our ears and eyes? Like, okay, buddy, you're coming up. Yes, growl. Growl for the people. I hope one day I get popular enough that someone takes it upon themselves to do like a compilation of me picking up my dog. So it's just like 10 minutes straight of him just being like, ah, that'd be great. It'd be so good because you're actually a very lovely little guy. Yes, you are, my sweet little heart. My sweet little guy. It really exposed the reality of Russiagate and how the Democrats were framing Trump so they continue their coup in Ukraine. Yeah, man, like brutal. And it totally plays. Like it's completely in the conversation now. And if you stand up and you're like, Russiagate's not a thing, people are like, Putin simp! And that's the conversation. It's crazy. And in Canada, they give you a carbon tax. How you doing, Amanda? And make the working class pay for F-ups of capitalism. Yeah, we didn't ask to be relying on fossil fuels. They made the automobile-dependent infrastructure. Yeah. Be good little workers. We have to use it, but make us pay for it instead of fixing the system. Yeah. Well, and it gets brutal the more you learn about this stuff. Like, we've had electric car technology for, like, since the 70s. Like, we have had alternative engine technologies that run on other forms of fuel. There's credible evidence that shows that, like hemp oil, right? You produce hemp oil in large enough amounts, and you can make an engine that runs on that. Like, the issue is not technology. Right? This is why I keep saying on this stream over and over again, like, we don't need to invent stuff. Like, we don't need to make something new or do any of, like, because we have all of that. We're literally choosing not to use it. And we're choosing not to use it for very clear reasons, because capitalists can't make money off of it, right? And if capitalists can't make money off of it, they don't care. It's an externality, right, to them, because of that, because they live in this very strict, narrow religious ideology that says if it doesn't enrich 5 people, that it doesn't count for some reason. And in the meantime, like, China is just going to blow past everybody because they don't have those restrictions. Like, they literally just have dudes in a room researching shit. And those guys are going to be like, hey, we found this thing. It completely destroys all of this other stuff that we've done. And the Chinese government, instead of being like, that doesn't enrich 5 men, they go, well, implement it. Right? And you can actually see this happen with the Belt and Road Initiative. That the initial rail and the initial technology that they put in, they started that project in 2008. So while we're going through a major financial collapse, they're literally building the Belt and Road Initiative. And the first group of it, the rail could go 200 kilometers an hour, right? Pretty good. Like, still pretty good. But 200 kilometers an hour, that's the rail that they're laying down. Now it's 14 years later, right? And the rail that they're putting down now can go 600 kilometers an hour, right? So, like, these guys, in a very short period of time, they tripled their speed. Like, while our economy is collapsing, while our economy is going in the toilet, while inflation is destroying us, right? Literally, you got to work 3 jobs just to pay rent, you know? Like, get totally fucked. Like, everybody gets totally fucked here in North America. And the Chinese is going to make, they're going to make us look like a bunch of fucking dumbasses. Because we are. Like, we fucking are. Like, look at the dumb bullshit we believe. Every good lie has a kernel of truth. I'm sure Russia tried to do a little trolling on Facebook to put their finger on the scales, but it pales into comparison to what the US does regularly. And honestly, like this is the thing that I always have said about this Russiagate thing. So fucking what if they did? Right? Like, so fucking what if they did? This is my favorite thing to do. When anybody comes at me with any kind of argument or any kind of thing, I just accept what they say. And I say, okay, so what you're telling me is that Russia meddled in our election, and that had a meaningful impact. So what I'm hearing is that our system of governance here in North America, in America at least, is so weak and fragile, and that literally anybody can fuck with it. Like, that's what you're telling me, is that we don't have a credible defense. We're a very weak nation, incapable of defending against literally anybody. Like, literally anybody. Like, if you can't defend your electoral system against the fucking Russians, so that you prevent them from having, like, a credible influence, then your system, it needs to be scrapped entirely. It's completely, it's a fake system. That's basically what you're saying, right? It's like a total capitulation that these people are actually talking about. And the more you think about it, the more you realize, like, oh yeah, like, literally anybody could do this. If the Russians can, right? Like, you're telling me that, like, Germany could. China definitely could, right? Like North Korea probably could, right? So why aren't they then, right? And if they are, then how come we can't find out about it? Like where is all this? Like it's such a bullshit story. I know. Like it's such a bullshit story that if you accepted it, like if you just accept it and then begin talking to them as if you've accepted it, you can pull it apart instantly. Like, oh shit, Russia's come in and they've completely infected the system. Oh shit, then that means like all of this is completely But they don't think that far. They don't care at all, like, because it's not a real story. China has the restriction of still being a developing country and needs to provide... But this developing country, when does a country cease to be a developing country? When can you actually say they're a developed country? Like, come on. Like, come on. Like, let's real talk here. Like, real talk here. Like... When do we get to start saying that China is not a developing country, but is like a country, like just a developed country? Like what? If it's up to the West, like if it's up to the West, they'll always call China a developing nation. That China's GDP will be 5,000 times better than ours. They'll have moon bases and they'll be shooting rockets at Mars and have like colonies on Mars. They'll be talking to aliens. They'll have lit like a sun reactor that's actually powering like all of the electric cars that they've built, and solar panels will be everywhere and they'll be completely green. Everything will be great. Their economy will be off to the moon and they'll still be a fucking developing nation if it's up to us. Right? Like, at what point do we just say, looks developed? Like, what's the line? Like, when are we convinced? You know, and like this is just one of their cities. Like this is Changsha, right? And I could show you video after video after video after video after video after video after video, and it looks just like this. Even if I showed you the videos of the poorer areas, I'd be like, yeah, it looks like North America to me. Like, I've seen places in North America that look exactly like this. Like, what is this, like, developed? Like, what are we actually talking about when we say that? You know? And I worry very deeply that we just say this stuff of China because it's a way for us to keep them on the downside. Like, oh, they're still developing, right? As if we're not in some kind of free fall collapse. The capitalist mainstream media manipulates and controls elections by brainwashing people 24/7. But Russia pays for a few Facebook trolls. Suddenly everyone loses their mind. And also, like, in my view, it plays into the narrative that American elections are consequential in any way. Right? It really mattered that the Democrat didn't get in instead of the Republican. That really changed things, you guys. The Russians messed with the election and that shifted it in the direction of the Republicans, and that really mattered. Like, as if the American elections are consequential or credible at all. Like, they're like, I think that's the biggest conspiracy when it comes to American American electoral conspiracies. Like, the big conspiracy isn't that Russia messes with everything. It's that their elections are credible or interesting or consequential at all. Like, that's the conspiracy. That if you want to talk to, like, the true conspiracy-minded people that live in America, it's the people saying that the electoral system is actually democratic and actually has a consequence to the outcome. Like, that's the conspiracy. Like, and so if you believe that conspiracy, the idea that the electoral system holds any validity whatsoever and has any consequence to the people of the nation, then you can believe that Russia is a credible threat to that thing that doesn't exist in the first place. Like, it doesn't exist in the first place, right? It's just like a show. It's time to come and vote. It's time to put it in the box. It really matters. We really count them. Then we pick one of these two guys who do what we say anyway, because they're both actors. Like, it's completely irrelevant. You're not going to vote for a dude and then that guy's going to come in and be like, I'm actually changing actual things. Like, they get They get their cue cards, they read the lines, they sign the document that they don't read. Right? And then they go to the place and everybody screams at them and they go, this is part of my job. And that's it. Like, that's it. That's the whole shtick. I know, buddy. Peanut butter, right? Peanut butter. Like, so if anybody comes at me with this, like, Russia-gate stuff, I'm just like, as if your system is consequential at all, as if it matters at all. Except what is bad about a Russian troll farm leading someone to a certain conclusion. Yes, we see what bad knowledge could do, but they accuse Russia of issues we've had for hundreds of years. I mean, that's another part of it. Like, one of the things that's really interesting about being called like a Russian propagandist, right? When I show people literal CIA documents, right? It's like, well, okay, like, just because the Russians are saying it doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Like, if a Russian stood up and said, the sky is blue, if he was like, look, the sky is blue, we wouldn't be like, Russian propaganda, right? Like, you can simultaneously be a Russian and even a Russian propagandist. Like, my position is very clear on when it comes to, like, sources and things like this. As long as you know who's saying it, you should be able to read it. Like, that's the thing that's most important to me. Like, I've had people come on here and be like, well, what about this source, John? Here's a source from, like, an outright, like, Russian propaganda rag. Are you going to listen to what these guys have to say? I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to listen to what the outright Russian propaganda rag has to say and give it exactly that amount of weight. Yeah, the overt Russian propagandists are saying this. Because if they say that, and then I can verify it with another source and be like, oh, interesting. Right? You can create like a connective tissue and be like, oh, these guys are saying this, and so is the State Department. Okay. Oh, guys, I gotta give my dog some peanut butter, or else he's absolutely gonna lose his mind. Do I have a video, or did I play the video? Oh, dude, this fucking thing.
Well, a new poll suggests close to 3/4 of Canadians think NATO allies should get ready for a military intervention in Ukraine. A weekend online survey by Leger of 1,515 Canadians found that half are holding out hope for a diplomatic resolution to the crisis. However, 64% of us think the conflict will last for many years, and 3/4 believe the situation has the potential to lead to a third world war, while roughly half of respondents think Russian President Vladimir Putin will use nuclear weapons if things don't go his way. Now, a Canadian man was injured when Russian missiles hit a military base near Ukraine's western border over the weekend. The head of Fight for Ukraine says the organization is helping the unidentified volunteer fighter get back home. The man's injuries are said to be superficial after he was hit by glass and metal fragments. Global Affairs says it is aware
man gets hurt in war. How about that? I love it, dude. Nearly 3/4 of Canadians say NATO should escalate the conflict into nuclear war. In other news, man gets hurt in war. Like, yeah, we know. Can't imagine why people are no longer paying attention to these guys, right? Big news, guys. There was an attack during a war and a man was hurt. Back to you, Lucy. This story pisses me off so much, dude. Like, this is just fucking bloodthirst, is what it is. And all of it does come down. Like, hey, how about report on the Donbass war? How about CP24, you do your fucking job, and you actually say in the midst of these things, like, yes, also, the Donbass war happened and that was real. Like, just no interest in it, not interested in talking about it, right? In terms of economics, GDP per capita needs to be 16K per person. It's actually very set in economics textbook. That is literally what differentiates between a developed or a developing country. I mean, the textbooks that are written by the neoliberals? Oh, okay. I mean, if that's the case, then China's getting there, dude. Like 16K per person, they're getting there. Like it's what matters to me more than anything about a national economy is how many people you have, right? And how quickly you can mobilize those people. Like, how quickly can you actually get them developed and get them working towards something? That's what really, really matters to me. Like, you take a look at like Mao's Great Leap Forward, and that was a very impressive moment, man. Like here in the West, we've worked so hard to try and downplay how important Mao's Great Leap Forward was, but it was a very impressive, like, military initiative. So it's and I mean, we have like a third of the population, even less than that. No, not a third even. Like we have like a fifth of the population, and most of the population is being completely wasted. Like, we're just like worthless. Like even the people who are making like good money are like financiers. So it's just worthlessness upon worthlessness. Like we're literally just burning a generation up in terms of productivity. Like and at this point, there's so much mistrust in the society that even if you did try to galvanize the populace to get them to do something, they're not going to do it. Like, let chaos reign, baby. Let it rain. See what happens. Like, I got taught by Marx, Legs, and Mao, and Yeshitela. So does that mean U.S. elections had meddling by Russians, Chinese, Germans, and African nationalists? Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing that's so fucking baffling, is that we're like, it's like we're claiming the Russians like reached into someone's brain and said like, vote for Trump, vote for, like, as if the Russians, as if the lies the Russians tell will be more effective than the lies we tell. I would say, compare GDP per capita, they have not yet reached European or North American levels, but they are able to get exponentially more bang for the buck in living standards and infrastructure. I mean, I also think that the Chinese are focusing on very specific things and seem to care less about, how to say this properly. Like, it seems as though the Chinese citizens themselves, and thereby the Chinese government, don't really care about like gaudy expressions of wealth the way that we do. Like, if somebody can like fly in a helicopter and land on like a mansion and then go to a yacht, that's like woohoo amazing for us. And we like put that in movies, and it'll be like slow motion with like rock and roll music and shit. Whereas the Chinese, I think, are just kind of like, that's kind of a bit much, don't you think? You know, like, I think that people are happier just to be like a more consistent, like a more, like, being just an average citizen in China is not like seen as this like, you got to keep grinding, or you pull your boots up and the bootstrapping and all that crazy shit. Although China is also going through its own like version of like the hustle culture, which is inspiring the like lie flat movement, which is very similar to our Great Resignation movement. So it's, but I think the major difference there is that our government works to try to alleviate that, whereas I think the Chinese government is more like, oh, there's this like movement of the lie flat thing. We should actually respond to that in reasonable ways. Is this a YouTube video, dude? Is this a YouTube video that you're pitching at me? How long is this? How big is this? Here, let's pause that. Get off that. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? JR. Don't know if I've seen you around here, bud. Oh, this is only 2 minutes long. Here. I won't play this right away, because I just want to catch up to the chat, and then I gotta go take a break for a second, so this is what I'll play. Is there a trigger warning here, bud? Is there a trigger warning here? Like, am I gonna see something really, like, bloody and shitty? Damn, John, that's so true. About connective tissue between propagandists and mainstream media sources. You put words to something I always do without realizing. If you can verify X, Y, Z separately between A, B, and C, maybe they got X wrong. Does that somehow make Y and Z untrue? Yeah, and I mean, like, it's always that way. Like, it's just like, as long as you know who's making the claim, right? Like, when I read the CBC, I know what it is. Like, it's state propaganda. right? Like it's and for a long time, like when I was growing up, everybody around me was really acting as like, oh, the CBC, stalwart and true, always telling the truth. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's overt, obvious state propaganda. Like but that's fine. Like this is the big, like, I remember having conversations with like when I was in university. Like it was always like university kids being like, it's state propaganda, just like Orwell. And, oh man, so our thoughts are controlled and all this kind of, I'm just like, well, what the fuck? Like the state funds it, the state provides it. Of course they're gonna fall in line with the ruling class, so with like the state, right? That's not wrong. Like the only way that it becomes wrong is if you're dumb enough not to realize it. Like if you're dumb enough to think that the state-funded propaganda is something other than state-funded propaganda, that's a problem. And then if you're dumb enough to think that because it's state-funded propaganda that you should ignore it, that's also dumb. Like, it's state-funded propaganda. Read it. See what the state has to say. And then if you can turn around and find another source, and that source says the same thing, well, you got a pretty good thing going here, don't you? Right? And then if you can get a foreign source, right? This is where it gets really interesting. And why I think the banning of RT, it should be considered unacceptable. That the banning of RT, in my view, should make literally every government that was in power when they did it unelectable. And I genuinely think that if you're sitting there saying banning RT was the right thing to do, I think fuck you. Fuck you completely. Because if RT says something, that's Russian state propaganda. And I'm going, oh, okay, that's what they say. Great. And then I find an article over here that is by, I don't know, Better Dwelling. Like or like Cosmo, for Christ's sakes. And it's like click, and they've sourced it, right? I'm not saying like Cosmo, like, oh my God, did you hear? Like I'm saying like they've sourced it, right? As if Cosmo, I don't know why I brought up Cosmo, as if they're like a big, anyway, it doesn't matter. But like click, right? And if there's like corroboration or agreement, right? And it doesn't have to be agreement on everything, right? But if all sources agree on certain things, that should be something that we all look at and go like, oh, everybody agrees that this is the case, right? Like, and if everybody agrees on it, I think that's significant, that we should pay attention to that and even bring it up. Yeah, the Russians said this, the Chinese said this, the Canadians said this, the Americans said this, and the corporations said this. And then you've got these kooky assholes off on the corner who said this, right? And then, oh, hey, look at this. You got this wild man off in the corner over here. He's bringing up a document over here that everybody else is ignoring. But you know what? If the CIA is saying it, like, you know, like, that's the game. Like, that's the whole job, if you ask me. That's the reason why I run this channel, and the reason why I think this channel is going to be successful is because... the reason why I think this channel is largely successful, which incidentally, like, share, subscribe, send me around, let people know, maybe donate to my super chat, maybe become a Patreon, right? All of the things, hit the bells, hit the whistles, oh my God. But like, the idea that we should simply not listen to what anyone has to say, to me, is just like completely an affront. Because facts don't lie. Like you can't, like a fact can't lie, right? Like if it's a fact, it's a fact, and if it's not, then it's not, and it doesn't matter where it came from. And if somebody stands up, even somebody you hate, even somebody who you don't trust, and they make a claim, and you can take that claim and you can verify that claim, well, that's good enough, right? And then you get to say fun things like even the guys we hate say this is true, and it connects. Right? Like, and it's like putting together a puzzle. And just because the source itself might be a little wonky doesn't mean anything, as long as you know that it's a little wonky. And then you turn around and you verify it. Like, well, you think I just trust some asshole that's like, hey, the CIA said this. I was like, well, okay, can I see that source? No, trust me, bro. Like, get fucked. I love that, man. I love, like, so often, like, this is what I love Jen Zedong for, by the way. Like, if you ask someone for a source, they'll either ignore you or tell you to fuck off. But Jen Zedong, you ask for a source, and they'll provide it. Like, they're like, yeah, here you go. And no bullshit, no fucking anything. They'll be like, oh yeah, here's the FBI document, here's the CIA document. They're a very useful group of people, man. They've been very helpful for me. Canada Soccer Mom says our military should intervene in Ukraine. Yeah, who cares what the unwashed masses think? I mean, that's the only thing that helps me with that, Harry, is that these people don't care what we think when it comes to like picking our leaders and shit. Like they don't care what we think when it comes to like passing policy and shit. They're not gonna suddenly look at a poll of like 1,500 people and be like, oh, they want us to invade Russia. Let's go, right? Like they don't care what we think. They care what we think, but they're not going to they're not going to move on that information. It's reached dangerous levels of delusion. These people don't understand how easily this can escalate into global nuclear conflict if Western countries officially get involved in Ukraine. Oh yeah, bud. Like I remember I was watching, I think it was literally like The View, and they were showing the Russian convoy. And the Russian convoy is just like going down the highway, right? I mean, the Nazis have been surrounded, so they don't have freedom of movement in Ukraine any longer, right? And they don't have aerial control. They got nothing. And so the Russians are literally just like driving a convoy down. Like we've got a video of one guy with one rocket launcher one time shooting at this thing, and that's probably the best that has happened, right? And you got like, oh no, it's Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity looking at this convoy just being like, wow, we could just bomb the shit out of that. And I'm just like, you crazy psychopath, dude. Like, yeah, we could just drop bombs on that convoy. It'd be easy. There'd be no fallout from that whatsoever. Like, get completely fucked. Get totally fucked, dude. Like, can you imagine? China will be the very developing country to become a developed country, per definition of economic textbook. And don't shoot the messenger. All I'm reporting were those. Yeah. No, you're right, Eric. You're right. No, it's fair to say. Like sometimes I just like blow shit off into the air. It's good to bring it down and actually plant your feet and say like this is the goal. This is the goal. Oh yeah, you're coming in with the facts, bro. Let's go. Let's put feet on the ground, right? Keep me honest, for sure. They ignored Putin's red lines about NATO and Ukraine, and look where that led. He was not bluffing. Why do these people think he's bluffing about the threat to the West to not get involved? No, they know he's not bluffing. That the ambassador to Russia, William, William Burns, when he was the ambassador to Russia, before he was the director of the CIA, he wrote that what we were doing was going to lead to war. They know. Like, they've always known, right? There's a reason why they've been, like, grooming this whole situation the whole time, right? Like, they don't talk about the Donbass war. They don't talk about this kind of stuff. Nobody is supposed to be reporting on this, right? Because they know that information, like the Donbass war, their funding of the Azov battalion, is absolutely crucial. And it does show that, like, they don't exactly have full control over the media apparatus, because a lot of that information got out. Like, it was well understood that Ukraine was one of the most corrupt countries in Europe. Like, it was well understood, and it was also well understood that Zelensky was a total clown. Like you can go take a look and find plenty of articles about commentary about Zelensky, commentary about Ukraine, right? Like this idea that like and the Americans are well aware that their actions are leading to war, right? That I am of the opinion that they are using this war to attain certain goals for what they perceive as their own national security, right? And they don't like that China has a pipeline into Europe through Russia. They super don't like that. And I'm not saying that what they're doing is smart or correct or is even going to work. It has the kind of logic as like a silverbacked ape, where they're just like, Europe is mine. Europe is mine. Like, it's got that kind of a logic around it. But once you kind of understand that, it makes a type of sense, right? Get Putin involved in a conflict that you don't report on, right? Have it be a big fucking propaganda win, right? Huge explosions of just like fruit flavor all over the place, right? Eject Russia from all of your international systems. This draws a line, right? The penultimate goal is to destroy Russia. But what they're doing is they're ejecting him from this system. They're ejecting Russia from this system so that they can keep Europe under their wing. Because what's scary for the Americans right now is that the number one trading partner for most of Europe is China, right? Minor exceptions, well, not minor exceptions, but exceptions are Germany and Italy. And, but that's starting to change, right? It's starting to be more of a 50-50 split. And so the Americans are desperately concerned that the Europeans are just going to start pivoting towards Russia and China, right? That this alliance between Russia and China, and you can actually see this pivot as this war has started to unfold. India has become a really, really hot point. India is actually going to find itself in the dead center of international politics all of a sudden, because India and China have not been on, right? They're not buddies, right? For very clear reasons. Like, the rise of China is very scary to India. China's right there. India's right fucking there. Just base geography, we share a border. Very scary, right? For India. They're very concerned about a sudden switch on an expansionist China, right? Which China hasn't really shown an interest in being an expansionist country, but it could. Like, what would the Indians do if the Chinese started to do that? It'd be very concerning for them. So they're concerned about China, and so the United States and Europe are using that to their advantage to keep India kind of on their side a little bit more. Well, now, because of this war, you're getting Putin inviting not just China, but also India, Saudi Arabia, and a bunch of other of these smaller states, a lot of the stands, right? Inviting them to what's being called an anti-fascist conference, right? Which is going to happen in August. And this is a major opportunity for China and India and Saudi Arabia to get into the same room and actually make a formal agreement with one another. And if this gives India a really interesting position to be in, because part of it is like, well, getting connected to the United States and Europe is not a bad idea, right? Being a part of that whole international agreement is interesting. But at the same time, like, we all saw what they fucking did. Like, we saw what's happening here, right? They're literally funding neo-Nazis to destroy Russians. And when the Russians go in to defend these people who are being destroyed, they're acting as though it's all Russians, Hitler. They're calling Putin Hitler. As we fund the Nazis, as we are the aggressors in the conflict. Like, it's insane. So the Indians are going to be something of an interesting pivot point coming up, because they could continue going along with the quote-unquote international community. Anytime you see those maps where, like, the international community says so and you see the actual vote and it's these guys in Australia, well, India could get in on that, right? Like, what? But at the same time, maybe China could look at India and be like, hey, yo, we could get that rail in there. Like, we could do this. Like, we could create, like, a more internationalist mindset that's focused on trade and communication and camaraderie with each other. And if you ask me, the big problem that India's got right now is that they're led by a fascist government. But even fascists know what's good for them. Like, if it comes down to it. Like, if somebody puts a bag of money in front of them and says, this is what you could have, they're going to take it. Anyway. Yeah, this is an existential issue for Russia. They cannot back down, yeah. The current GDP... So they're getting there, right? They're getting there. And I'm more or less of the opinion, Eric, that they're going to... When they get there, they're not just going to, like, hit it. They're just going to rocket right up into it. Robert Stan. How you doing, bud? The West needs to take copious bite of humble pie. History is not on their side. That's not how it's going to work. Like, that's not how it's going to work, right? Like, Americans are... like, you know the scene at the end of Doctor Strangelove? You've all seen it, so no spoilers necessary. Where the guy is, like, riding the rocket, like, riding the missile. He's like, yeehaw! Yeehaw! Before he blows up. That's how America is going to go down. They're not going to go down, like, they're not going to, like, encounter some kind of difficulty. The numbers are going to go down, and they're going to go, like, maybe now is a good time to look at each other and ask, how are we? Are we being good neighbors? Are we being good neighbors to our fellow citizens here on the planet Earth, do you think? What do we think the Chinese think about us? Do you think that they think that we're being neighborly? They're not going to do that. Like, they're gonna go down like fucking Britney with the hair clippers. Like, they're gonna fucking go, when they go down, they're gonna go down in a fist fight with like bullets, and it's gonna be like a fucking shootout at the OK Corral, man. Like, they're not gonna go humble pie. Like that, and that's not how civilizations go down. Right? The United States is going to experience 100 years of humiliation. That and you're already seeing it. The entire rest of the world, like the United States, has had to crawl to Venezuela, hat in hand, and say, "Mr. Maduro, sir, may we please have some of your oil?" And Maduro finds himself in a position where he's able to actually dictate terms, where he's able to actually look at the Americans and say, okay, but if I trade oil with you, you say that I'm the fucking president, right? The United States still says that Juan Guaido is the fucking president of Venezuela, right? It's a fairly major sticking point between Maduro and the United States, I would say. And so Maduro is taking this opportunity to say, okay, if you want our oil, then you say that I'm the fucking president of Venezuela. You declare it. You acknowledge it as true. You eat that humble pie, and the Americans aren't doing it. Right? And because of the way the whole system is structured, right? It's the citizens who will suffer. Are you okay, buddy? Sorry, guys. My dog is caught in that reverse sneezing thing we all know and love. So I'm going to put this on, and then I'll come back and I'll continue talking about this. Okay, buddy.
Я знаю, що як журналіст я маю бути об'єктивним, маю бути виваженим для того, щоб повідомляти вам інформацію з холодним серцем, але направду триматися зараз дуже важко, особливо в такий час, і якраз уже нас на Росії називають нацистами, фашистами і так далі. Я дозволю собі зацитувати слова Адольфа Ейхмана, який сказав, що для того, щоб знищити націю, потрібно нищити в першу чергу дітей. Тому що, вбиваючи їхніх батьків, діти виростуть і обов'язково помстяться. Вбиваючи дітей, вони ніколи не виростуть, і нація зникне. Як Збройні сили України не можуть нищити російських дітей, тому що це заборонено правилами війни, і це заборонено різними конвенціями, в тому числі Женевськими. Але я не зі Збройних сил України. І коли мені випаде нагода розправитися з росіянами, я обов'язково це зроблю. Я дотримуюсь, раз ви вже називаєте нацистами, дотримуюсь доктрини Адольфа Ейхмана і зроблю все, що від мене залежить, для того, щоб ні ви, ні ваші діти ніколи не жили на цій землі. Для того, щоб ви відчули, як воно, коли вмирають ні в чому не винні цивільні люди. Для того, щоб ви відчули весь біль і страждання, коли ви говорите, а ми не починали війни, це все Путін. Ми не хотіли цієї війни. Ми теж її не хотіли. Але тепер ви мусите розуміти, що тут йдеться про перемогу українського народу, а не мир. Нам потрібна перемога. І якщо для цього доведеться вирізати всі ваші сім'ї, я буду одним із перших, хто це зробить. Слава нації! І сподіваємось, що такої нації, як Росія і росіяни, ніколи більше не залишаться на цій землі. Тому що це просто виродки, які засмічують цю землю. І якщо в українців є можливість, що вони зараз в принципі роблять, трощити, різати, вбивати, душити москальноту, я сподіваюся, що кожен внесе свій вклад і замочить хоча б одного москаля.
I did not see any of that. So I assume it was bad.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org,
What?
the War and Peace
Get the hell out
Report.
of here. Get the hell out of here, Imperialist Now. Yeah, 1,000 subs. I did it. I did it. And I even got monetized, Amanda. Look at that. I literally stayed up for 2 days straight being nervous about that, fretting about it. I made a video about, like, is it going to happen? And then literally as I was uploading the video, they sent me a thing saying, yeah, we're monetizing your channel. And I was like, I like felt the energy just like fall off of me. Hopefully you do get big. I'm just a Gen Zong fellow Canadian, semi-baby ML who saw your vids being posted. You're like an ML Hassan Piker to keep on and listen to on after. Glad to be here live. Amazing, Jared. That's so nice, dude. What a nice comment that is. And honestly, I feel like that is high praise. Like, I don't align perfectly with Piker, but like Piker does pretty good work. I'm not blown away by his Ukrainian work, because I think that he has talked about the coup and he's talked about the coup and he's talked about the Nazis, and so that's given him, like, that's maintained his credibility. But like he doesn't talk about the Donbass war, and he still acts as though Putin this is just a complete war of aggression. He has no that his reasons are a bit more ephemeral, but instead of being more direct. Which is what it is about the Donbass War. Like, that's the shift point. That's the reason why the Donbass War is so important, because it's a visceral difference. It's the difference between looking at like a plan and being like, I see this strategic chessboard thing, and if I make this move, it will benefit my country later on and all that kind of stuff. It's the difference between that and like, Nazis are killing Russians. Like, that's a very human, like, pull out of your gut. Like, gut check, do you actually give a shit about the reality that Nazis are killing Russians? And if you don't, then you can just be like, yeah, Putin had no reason to invade. But if you do, like, if you have a base sense of humanity inside of your heart, you can look at that and be like, yeah, I get it. Like, I see why Putin would want to have invaded and made a big stink out of it, right? Hey, maybe don't fund Nazis. How about that? Maybe don't fund Nazis to actively attack Russians. How about that? The approach that you are describing requires a lot of media literacy and time to investigate, which is sadly something that the majority of people do not have, which is why one-sided propaganda works. Yeah, which is why I actually am pretty forgiving of the populace generally, right? Like, we don't know what's going on. And to know what's going on, because we've been so thoroughly betrayed by our media apparatus, and a betrayal is exactly the word. Like, it's treacherous, the way that our media operates. And because we've been so thoroughly betrayed by them, to know what's going on requires an enormous amount of media literacy and an enormous amount of skepticism. And I think the only thing I'm actually frustrated about our own people is, like, we keep falling for the same tricks, you know? Like, if they were different tricks, I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay. But it just seems like it's the same narrative over and over and over again, and every single time, like, every time it's the trick happens and the populace goes, we gotta support the imperialist capitalist state, and then I, like, talk them down from this crazed, hysterical edge that they're on and get them to a point where they're like, well, I don't necessarily agree with you, but I see where you're coming from. And if I can get anybody to say that, that's a win for me, right? Because then at least they're listening. At least they're in a spot where they're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I don't know if I agree with you, but okay. And that's good enough. And then the same thing happens and they're right back up here again. And I'm like, bro, didn't we just spend the last, like, literally 5 years? Didn't I just pull you down from the Syria bullshit? Didn't I just pull you down from the WMD lie? Didn't we just fucking go through this? Like, didn't we literally just do this? And it's just gone. And I gotta, like, pull him back down and be like, and so I think the thing that I really wish our society did more or got to is realizing that the people who lied to you before are going to lie to you again. You know, that's the thing that's been most, I think, surprising about this, is that I really didn't think we would get back to post 9/11 hysteria again. And we did. We did it. Yeah, we did it. We managed it. We got back to post 9/11 hysteria again. You know, it's just like, really? Like, And this time, I guess the trick's a little different because they didn't even make a claim, right? They were more clever about it this time. They just omitted things, right? As long as you don't know about the Donbass War, as long as you don't know about the 2014 coup, as long as you don't know about the Nazis, the literal fucking Nazis who have taken the country over, like, you can believe what you like, right? You can believe that Putin is just a crazed Hitler-level madman who's going to sweep across Europe and he's just here for his own crazed ambition, and you can believe that all you like, right? As long as you don't know what's going on, right? So it just blows me away that people are like, because when I hear the State Department say something, my first initial reaction is probably not. You know, like I'll say to people all the time, like, how much do you trust your media? Scale from 1 to 10. No one's ever given me higher than 5, right? And after they give me their low ball number, the most common number is like a 2 or 3. I say, well, then why do you trust them about this? Like, you don't trust them at all, except when it comes to war with Ukraine, right? Why do you trust? And where am I on that scale? Scale from 1 to 10. How much do I trust my media? -10. I genuinely find that when the corporate media and when the State Department start making claims, if I just take the opposite position, I'm usually right. That's literally what I did with the Uyghur genocide, by the way. That Joe Biden stood up and started talking about a Uyghur genocide, and I was just like, probably not. And I just started reporting from that position, and I was right. I was just like, yeah, of course. Such a bullshit thing to say. There's a genocide going on that no one can see, find, or plan. Yeah, that's definitely happening. No, there's no refugee crisis. They killed 8 million people, but nobody saw it. Yeah, we have satellite imagery of the top of buildings, but not satellite imagery of the 8 million people they killed. Yeah, it's a real thing that definitely happened. Like, probably not, bro. Probably not. What do you got? The German journalists that made Ukrainian agony the concealed war state how the West accredited like 400 journalists in 2014-15 to cover Donbass, but there were next to none on location. Yeah, I mean, like, they don't want to actually talk about that war. That war is so crucially important to talk about, and nobody talks about it. Like, nobody talks about it. And what's so fucking annoying is that I can literally type Donbass War documentary into YouTube. Here you go. This is the best one, if you ask me. Really, really good footage. You can see a helicopter, a Ukrainian helicopter shooting the Donbass airport, the Donetsk airport. You got great footage. You can see this on repeat here. This is footage of the Euromaidan coup, right? John, it's RT. That's Russian propaganda. Well, here's one that the fucking French made, right? Here's one the fucking Germans made, right? They're fucking all down the line. Like, everybody made a document. Like, you can see Vice did one, right? The Donbass conflict. Like, everybody has made a documentary about this definite thing that certainly happened, and nobody talks about it. Nobody fucking talks about it. And it's absolutely crucial fucking information. It's absolutely crucial fucking information. That, like, if you believe that the Donbass people declared their independence and then the attacks happen and you say, well, they're separatists, well, you're still wrong. People are allowed to declare their independence. That's like a crucial and centrally protected right in all international politics. If a group declares their independence, it is up to the international community to acknowledge it and believe them and to move forward with that belief, right? Unless they're the Donbass people, then get fucked. Then they're separatist terrorists, right? And if you believe that they declared their independence after the war of aggression began and you're cool with it, then you're a piece of goddamn shit. So you lose either way, right? You lose whether or not you think that that like, who gives a shit if they're fucking separatists? Like, what are you even talking about? Nazis rolled up on their cities and started to shell them. Of course they're separatists. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about, dude? And like, Like, I don't know what you need to see at this point, right? And I don't know what people like, and it's always talked about in this sort of passing way, like an oh, by the way, and then a sentence is said and everybody moves on. Like, and everybody is doing this, right? Jimmy Dore is doing this. Like, and I respect Jimmy Dore's reporting on this, but like, Jimmy Dore is doing this. Matei is doing this. Max Blumenthal is doing this. Fucking Abby Martin is doing this. Chris Hedges is doing this. Fucking Noam Chomsky is doing this. Everybody is doing this. We're like, oh yeah, you know that fucking 8-year-long war where the Nazis rolled up and started shelling a city and have killed 14,000 people to date? You know that whole fucking conflict where Nazis kill Russians for 8 years? Yeah, that's just a sentence. We can just move past that. What the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about, bro? Like, what the actual fuck? Don't you think that that's, like, crucial information? Don't you think that that kind of shines like a light? Of like, hey, that's important. Like, that's fucking important. Like, if you were sitting in a room and then you heard a scuffle and you poked your head out the door and you saw two guys just beating the shit out of each other, right? And one of them was a guy you didn't like, right? And you walked over and you like tried to split him up or whatever, and you just said, it's this guy I didn't like is the problem. And then you saw camera footage from up on the window, and what you saw was the guy you didn't like sitting there like reading a newspaper, and then the guy that you didn't even know, right, walked over and just started punching him in the face, right? And the guy starts defending himself. And then you still said, well, the guy I didn't like, he's the real aggressor. Get completely fucked. And the Donbass war is the turning point, right? You can believe the 2014 coup. You can even believe the 2014 coup was done by Nazis. You can believe the NATO expansionist thing. You can believe all of that kind of stuff and still turn around like fucking Chris Hedges did and say, but Putin, this is a war crime what he's done. Like, it's definitely a war of aggression, absolutely. And you can believe that even if you're talking about the coup, even if you're talking about the Nazis, even if you're talking about the expansionist NATO policies, even if you're talking about all that, you can still say, yeah, but Putin, this is a war of aggression, it's on him, right? The second you start talking about the Donbass war, that fucking shit dies. You're the leader of a Russian country. There are Nazis on your border shelling Russians. Do I need to remind everybody that Nazis killed 25 million Russians? Does that need to be said? Seems like. So you're the leader of a Russian country. There are literal Nazis shelling Russians on your fucking border. You're going to do nothing about it? You're going to do nothing about that. Then you're the worst leader in the history of mankind. I genuinely believe this in my heart. That if you're the leader of a country and your citizens or people who are of your cultural ancestry are being shelled by literal fucking Nazis on your border, and your decision is to go, yeah, we'll just ignore that, that's fine. Oh yeah, of course Ukraine, you can join NATO. What, missiles on our border? What? You're the worst leader in the history of mankind. There's never been a worse leader than the person you're suggesting Putin be. What's Putin doing? According to the Donbass war that everybody fucking ignores. He's defending Russians from Nazis. Oh no. And I hope he fucking kills a bunch of them. I hope all of those Nazis die and burn in hell forever. Because they're fucking Nazis. Like, I don't know how much clearer I need to make this. Apparently pretty fucking clear, because nobody talks about the Donbass war. Oh yes, there was that Donbass war that happened, 2014. Moving on. Don't need to talk about that centrally crucial piece of information. Extremely crucial. Nobody talks about it. Just nobody. Not even interested. Like, oh yeah, Donbass war, I guess. Shrug. Watch some of these fucking documentaries, dude. Like, watch any of this. It's easy to find. Anybody can see it. It's right in front of your fucking brain. Right in front of your eyes. You want to see helicopters shooting at fucking civilian infrastructure, right? You want to see military personnel in Donetsk talking about how they're fighting Nazis. You want to see people grieving over their lost settlements. You want to see confessionals with people saying, yeah, the Nazis came through and burnt down my settlement, burnt down my home. You want to see that shit? It's all here. And we just fucking ignore it. Because Putin's Hitler. Putin's the next Hitler. You watch, he's the Hitler. Like, get fucked. Get super fucked. Like, get super fucked. And I'm saying get super fucked to people like fucking Noam Chomsky. Like fucking Chris Hedges. Like, why am I better at this than you? Isn't this your whole fucking shtick? Didn't you work for the New York fucking Post or the New York Times? Right? Aren't you at fucking MIT? Right? Like, how is it that I'm fucking better than these guys at this? Like, get completely fucked. Right? I just think it's Russia goggles. I think they're just like Russia and the implicit bias counts, even for leftists. Like, get rid of the fucking goggles. Nazis are attacking Russians. Like, I don't know why I'm the guy that's got to ring the bell on this. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, nobody's talking about how Nazis were attacking Russians for 8 years. I guess it doesn't matter. I guess it's not important. I saw an article today where India is supporting Russia, US not liking it all. Yeah, but I'm worried that India's playing both sides. Like, and honestly, I look at their sort of position geopolitically, and I think now is a good time to do that. Like, they probably should play both sides. Like, who's going to stop them, right? I think they have a very cynical political outlook, and they know that when they're talking to the United States, they're talking to somebody who also has a very cynical outlook. And so when the United States says, you know, we consider this a betrayal and all this kind of stuff, India's like, yeah, sure you do. Like, I don't think that they take the United States very at a very face value kind of thing. I think that I think the Indians have the Americans pegged for what they are, but are still willing to work with them, which makes them a very interesting people. Honestly, very interesting people. And we'll see how this unfolds. There is credible evidence to show that there's an uprise in communism happening, specifically Maoism in India. Whether that's an infusion coming in from China, which, I mean, I think it would be, honestly. But also, like, India's being run by fascists. Like, it's not a good place to be right now. Like, you've got, like, the farmers uprising and all that kind of shit going on in India. So, we'll see. Keep eyes on this. It's interesting, anyway. I think I read somewhere recently that Wang Yi, the Chinese FM, might be going to India soon. I think a resolution of the border dispute is imminent, modeled after the resolution of the China-Russia disputes. Yeah, like, I think that China wants it. Like, I know that they recently, like, they had some border disputes fairly recently, like within the last 5 years. And that's not great, but I do think that it is really in China's best interests to just, like, peace up, be buddies, try to get that Belt and Road Initiative in there, right? Like, China really wants a relationship with India the way that United States has a relationship with Canada. Like, that's really what they want, you know? And if China was smart, that would be its kind of goal. Of course, India doesn't want to be Canada in that arrangement. India wants to be the United States. India wants China to be Canada, right? That's kind of the tension, right? That even if they both kind of look at each other and be like, yeah, we could be buddies, one of them wants to be the big brother, right? And India doesn't want it to be China. India wants to be the big brother. So I think one thing that would probably help India out a lot is if they got rid of their fascist leadership, because that fascists really think that way. That like, this is a hierarchy, I need to be on the top of it. If I'm not on the top of it, then I'm a slave, right? That's really how fascists think. And so they need to get rid of I think Modi is his name, if I'm not completely mistaken. I'm a professional. I do this fucking professionally. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Pakistan doesn't seem to want to appease the West anymore either. Both are nuclear powers. Yeah, Pakistan has been telling the United States to get fucked this whole time. They don't give a fuck what the United States has to say. They saw what they did to Afghanistan and Iraq in very personal, direct ways. We don't talk about it, but Pakistan has experienced a refugee crisis. Like, for fuck's sake, if these countries are experiencing a refugee crisis from all of this, Pakistan certainly is. I mean, this is where the whole Uyghur genocide, the whole Xinjiang thing came from. It's a fucking refugee crisis that the Chinese are trying to deal with, right? But nobody talks about that, right? Nobody gives a shit about the refugee crisis caused by Afghanistan, which incidentally is unfolding as we speak, as the famine sets in because the United States is creating a famine in Afghanistan, right? Nobody gives a fuck about that at all. So like Pakistan has been dealing with this refugee crisis, and so has India this whole fucking time, and they look at the United States as like a demon. I would too, right? They've seen the face of the demon. They know what it looks like, right? I just sort of report on it. They've met the demon personally. Pakistan and China kind of besties, have been a long time. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Pakistan doesn't like India, right? And it really is just like the enemy of your enemy is my buddy, right? Like and Pakistan, like if you think about it in terms of spheres of influence, right? Like Pakistan's sphere of influence is very much India. This border here with China, but like that's really like Tibet, and like this is all like mountainous, right? So the border is like literally like one road you can see, right? Like quite literally, quite seriously. This is why Tibet got that like that image of being like a mystical, magical place. It's because it's fucking impossible to get into. You can just see it by looking at it. It's all mountain, right? And everything's built into the mountains and all that kind of stuff. And so the border that exists between China and Pakistan is very like sure, it's like, yeah, I guess. Whereas the border they share with India is very serious. Same with Afghanistan, same with Iran, right? So Pakistan's sphere of influence is really like this, right? Like really, really like this. China's sphere of influence is really like this, right? Like, so they're touching base with like Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, a bit of Pakistan because the same reason. But India is definitely their big concern. Definitely the big concern. And these countries down here, I think the American strategy of destroying this place worked, by the way. That if Mao and his subsequent predecessors had been allowed to come in and take this all over militarily, this would all be part of China, right? And so the goal of the United States was just to turn this all into rubble so that the Chinese would be like, well, that's a huge burden for us. We'd have to rebuild that. And so they didn't. And so now they've Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos are all very much like, sup, China? Like, sup, you're over there, you're China, we're over here, right? And there's even talks that these guys are, and not like firm talks, but definitely talks that they're interested in federation with one another, right? Create like a little federation of small countries. Makes sense. I love talking about this, by the way. China has got to be my favorite subject to talk about. Second favorite subject to talk about. My favorite subject to talk about is a little off topic. Like, you guys want to talk about how we're all quantum beings? You want to talk about how we're all just energy beings walking around, looking at stuff? I love talking about China, though, man. China, fascinating place. Founding member of Azov killed today. I guess the Nazis in Ukraine are reaching the find out portion of their terrible actions. Yeah, and they know it. Like, they know it. Like, I'm seeing very credible reports. Like, what they're doing in Mariupol, you don't do that if you've got an exit strategy, dude. Like, they're entrenching. This is like Hitler in the bunker time for these guys. Like, they're in the bunker. They're trying to find a way out. They're trying to use human shields. They're trying to find their exit strategy, and it's not going to happen for them, right? Like, these guys are dead. Like, they're already dead. It's just, what are the circumstances of their death? And many of them, I think, will take the Hitler way out at the end of the day. That they'll just be alone in a room with the fucking Russians coming down the stairs. Like, but they're both seemingly looking eastward right now, which I absolutely critically support. I mean, how could you not? Like, seeing what's going on with this fucking situation in Donbass and this explosion of fruit flavor, right? Like, you can't trust these Americans. Like, you really can't. Like, they're going to fund fucking neo-Nazi groups, and it's only outrageous to me because of my cultural connections to the fight against Nazism and all of this. But if you're living in India and like Pakistan and these places, like you've seen them do the same story in Afghanistan, Iraq, fucking Yemen, like Libya. Like you've seen them do this over and over again. Like come into a region, fund the Nazi version of the Islamists, right? Find the Islamic Nazis, fund those guys, overthrow the government, right? Like you've seen them do it over and over again. You've spoken to people who have fled from that. So like, if you're these countries and there's this kind of upswell of support for like a Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, like Iran meetup group, yeah, maybe you want to be on board with that. I definitely wouldn't turn down the invite. I definitely would send somebody at least. I have to say I'm fairly new at this leftist since I only officially become a leftist at the beginning of the pandemic. Your background is a form of Christianity, though, right? Like, so I feel like people who have religious backing who don't root what they say in a fundamentalist version of religion end up being really powerful leftists. That's somebody like Chris Hedges, right? His background is a Presbyterian minister, so Harvard trained, no less. The Donbass war created a huge amount of pressure on Putin by the Russian people. Yeah, a major factor in his recognition of LPR and DPR, which was pushed by the Communist Party first and foremost. Yeah, I think that narrative plays completely. And also, the American media loves to show the protests, that there are protests happening in Russia, right? You can't protest at very specific locations because they're worried about color revolutions. Like, it's very credible to believe that an assassination attempt would be made on Putin under these circumstances. I think it would be very popular in the West. That if Putin was assassinated, I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, right? So this idea that, yeah, we'll just let like 10,000 people protest in front of his palace where he is. Like, no. Get completely fucked. People who talk that way are dumb. Like, that's a very dumb way to look at the world. Like, no, you can't protest in the middle of a fucking war right in front of where we're doing our business. Like, sorry. Like, oh, it's an infringement of your freedoms. So is a bullet in my fucking head. Right? Like, it's just ugh. And and so they love showing that kind of stuff. How like, oh, they're cracking down here, and oh, there's a protest over here, and they're doing all that kind of stuff. But if you look at the polling data coming out of Russia, the Russians are in favor of this war, right? They look at this war and they're just like, yeah, like we want it to dust up, like we don't want it to go on forever. We don't want it to turn into Iraq, right? They're making that very clear. But they were in favor of this, and if they weren't, Putin probably wouldn't have done it, right? Of course they're in favor of it. Like, I just feel like there's so much distillation of basic humanity from the conversation because we just don't pay any attention to the Donbass war, which I won't get into that again. I feel like I really tread that today. Of course it's not telling me you're live. Why would it? Why would it? I actually worry about that. I think that I got monetized, and I think a bunch of people's notifications got dumped out. So check your notifications, guys. Let people know. And I'm not trying to say that it's YouTube clamping me down or anything, but I just think technology is hard. Like, this is something I learned about YouTube, is like, it would tell me, like, you have 500 subscribers. And then I would, like, click over to another page, and it'd be like, you have 490 subscribers. And I'd be like, oh, no, I lost 10 subscribers all of a sudden. And then I would, like, refresh the page, and it'd be like, you have 520 subscribers. And I'd be like, oh, my God. And I got caught on that for a little while, and then I realized, no, it's technology. Like, they can't keep consistency, and they don't really know. And, like, so anytime it's, like, YouTube's, oh, John, YouTube, it stopped notifying me that you're on. I'm like, yeah, technology. Like, I don't think it's YouTube being nefarious or anything, or built into the algorithm or any of that. I just think that the system's bigger than the people, and nobody knows what's going on. That's what I think. I think that's part of the reason why I got monetized. I don't think that they actually know what's going on, you guys. I think I'm just like a little bug living in the infrastructure, being like, if they knew, and they will. Rebelieving WMD style lies yet again. Turns out that the boy can cry wolf over and over, and people still believe him as long as the media tells them to. There is one difference that I do think saves face a little, which is that with the WMD lie, that was a claim, right? That was a claim that they made that we could debunk, right? With the Syrian chemicals, like the Syrian chemical warfare, that's a claim that they made that we could debunk. It'd be like, you made this claim, we found evidence to the contrary, right? So that's a claim and a debunk. This time around, it's just omission. It's not even a claim, right? But the claim is Putin invaded unprovoked. That's the claim. So, but they've only been able to make that claim because of what they've omitted, right? So it's a lie, but it's a different kind of lie. So, and I know that's kind of a subtle distinction, but I think that subtle distinction is enough because the populace is so clueless and disconnected from what's actually happening in the world that all you got to do is tell a different style of lie and you can get them, and, which I think is what's happened. And so I am ultimately very sympathetic to Westerners and the plight of the Westerners because not only are they dumb and gullible, and guys, let me be very, very clear about my fellow countrymen. Canadians are very dumb and are very gullible. Like really, really, really. I'm not really trying to be mean about it, but like these are the guys. Like,
how's it going? Okay, boy, like I don't know what's going on. Why the letters didn't come up?
The letters?
Yeah.
Oh, there they are.
Okay. Good day. Welcome to the Great White North.
These guys, if you don't know who these guys are, Bob and Doug McKenzie, they were extremely popular here in Canada. Like iconically popular, right? Like these guys are built into the fabric of Canadiana and Canada. Bob and Doug McKenzie. And why? Because they're our everyman. These guys are Canadian Homer Simpson. And these guys are dumb, right? They're lovable. They're nice. They're trying their best. Hard-working guys. Very dumb. And we love them. So when I say that Canadians are gullible, and when, like, I mean it. Like, we're very gullible. But also, this time the lie is very big, and it's a different kind of lie. Right? It's a different kind of lie. Anyway, I'll stop ragging on my fellow Canadian countrymen. The vid I shared with you was a Ukrainian TV presenter quoting a Nazi war criminal. Very nice. Remember those numerous Vice episodes on the Donbass War? Well, at Vice is weird, man, because sometimes Vice reports on something accurately, and sometimes it reports on it in a kind of like bewildered, like, what the fuck kind of way, and then sometimes it's outright just fabrication. So I never use Vice for anything because I never know when they're bullshitting me, right? Sometimes like their coverage of the Uyghur genocide stuff was disgusting. It was despicable what they did, and the narratives that they were trying to spin. Like the documentary I watched about the Uyghur genocide was like literally like she was a paid actress to pretend to be a journalist. Like very embarrassing, and like. I look back on when they went to North Korea, right? And the whole time they were in North Korea, they were just like acting like, what a weird, strange place. And like did not talk about the fact that we leveled this place to the ground. So yeah, it's a weird place. They literally just built this building. Was watching CGTN earlier and Americans started pushing false claims and the female host shut them down, basically saying, bring the receipts if you're making claims. Yeah, we're not spreading your propaganda. Exactly. Bring the receipts. Like, where's the facts, man? Like, we've got all kinds of stuff. RT documentary didn't get banned from YouTube. Nice. Yeah, we'll see. Things slip through the cracks. It's like I say, dude. It's like I said just a minute ago. It's too big, right? The machine is too big. It's not being run by people, right? It's a machine. It's algorithms, right? That we're just the mice in the machines right now, and they can't get everything. Like, imagine how big a job that actually would be to sift through the entire catalog and get rid of every RT video. Just not going to happen. A few hundred civilians have died in Ukraine so far, and there are millions of refugees. But when a million Uyghurs are supposedly in concentration camps, there are 0 refugees. Yeah, it's exactly how why I call total bullshit on. It's why I call total bullshit on the supposed famine that killed 100 million Chinese in Mao's Great Leap Forward, right? I call total bullshit on it. Where's the refugee crisis? You're telling me 100 million people, like a full, like 10% of the country of China's population died in a famine, right? And that's deaths. That's bodies dead. 10%, 100 million people, and there's no refugee crisis. Moreover, there's no international observer who commented on it as it was happening. There's no pictures of it. No one wrote an article about it. No one wrote a story about it while it was happening. Like, there's literally no evidence of this event occurring. Literally none. I'm deadly serious. Find the evidence. Where the story comes from? A couple of statisticians in the mid-'80s, so Reagan's era, looked at some numbers, futzed with them, and said, 100 million people died in the 60s under Mao. And they just propagated it and everybody ran with it. Like, there isn't a scrap of evidence. Like, there's no, where's the refugees in Mongolia? Where's the refugees in Pakistan? Where's the refugees in India? Where's the refugees in this area? Like, we're talking about 100 million fucking dead people. And if you got 100 million dead, you've got at least 10 million running, right? Where are they? Oh, they don't exist because it didn't happen. Fucking annoying. And I'm so pissed off about this one because the National Post just recently re-vomited out that garbage. You got what's his name? Slevzov Zhizhov, that guy who talks like this and he says an awful lot of things but doesn't actually say anything particularly interesting. And that guy says that it happened, and I'm like, fuck you. Where? Show me anything. Literally anything. Even a single commentator, even a single person writing down in the 60s, oh, by the way, 100 million people died in a famine. Like, where is it? Doesn't exist. Ugh. Donbass. Zelensky isn't even a Ukrainian. Apparently he's in Poland. Of course he's an actor. He can't act really well. Yeah, who knows where Zelensky actually is. Like, they're maintaining the idea. Like, this is the thing about this particular point. There's no way to know. Like, there's no way to know. He could be in Kiev. He's probably not. Like, they probably evacuated him to, like you say, Poland, right? And that's sort of what the rumor wheel is talking about, Vince. But like, I haven't seen anything to, like, I cannot confirm or deny, right? For all we know, he's just stuck in Kiev, right? I doubt it. I'd be very surprised, but given how enormously cowardly he must be as a person. Oh, I know. Yeah, Patrick Lancaster was interviewing a grandma today. She says that her house was bombed twice in the past 8 years. Yeah, Patrick Lancaster's been great. If you can find, because YouTube removed Russell Bentley's stuff, which... Real heavy loss. Although I have Russell Bentley's stuff bookmarked, so maybe I'll just propagate that just for fun. Russell Bentley. This is a mega folder, so it is, you got to like download it and stuff, but I'm going to spread it around anyway. If you don't know who Russell Bentley is a Texan who moved to the Donbass region after the coup in order to, quote, kill Nazis. I can't imagine a more respectable thing to do. And if you tell the supposed anti-fascists about him, they think he's a piece of shit. So we're literally in 1939 again. If only history would have taught us. You see the Max Blumenthal tweet about the Ukrainian TV host calling for genocide against Ukrainians? Yeah. Like, that shit's happening all over. Oh, I'm going to hit that for sure, Barnabas. They like to say that Russia should just have gone into Donbass and no further, as if leaving the Ukrainian military intact would not just... Yeah, exactly. Like, what I've had people say this to me, and that's how you know these people are stupid, right? Like, that's a very stupid thing to believe, right? So, you're telling me that you're going to just go into the Donbass region and, like, take over the Donbass region, and now your military's in the Donbass region, and all of the supply chains that go from Kiev to fucking Warsaw to Berlin, right, to London to Paris, all of that's intact. So they should take human beings, Russians, who you don't care about, honestly. These people don't care about Russians. They don't care at all. But you want to take human beings and put them into a grinder and grind them into Nazis who are just going to be completely supplied. Oh, and incidentally, also have air control, right? Because you're not going to go into the rest of Ukraine, so that means not knocking out any of their air support, right? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, that's how you know these guys are stupid. Like, just shut the fuck up. Like, it's so stupid to say that shit. Like, you can't just dip a toe into war. Like, you can't, right? It's like there are thresholds and there are degrees. So, for example, like nuclear war, you can't just do a little bit of nuclear war, right? Like, nuclear war is very much an all-in sort of proposition, right? It's the same thing with war. You can't just do like a little bit of war. You're either doing war or you're not. And if you're going to do war, you better fucking do it right. Very, very straightforward. Yeah, Vince, I think that's right. But and the thing I got to believe in with Chris Hedges and Jesse Ventura is that they just don't know about it. Like, that's really what it's got to be. Like, it is, and I think that's fair to say, right? Like, Chris Hedges and Jesse Ventura and these guys are well read. They do know what's going on. I trust them when they speak, and I find their position to be pretty inoffensive, honestly. Like, we should stop doing war, stop doing NATO aggression, like all of that kind of stuff. Like, all of that is right. It's believable to me that this Donbass war would slide under their radar, that they really wouldn't know that it's actually going on, because that's how enormous the like cone of silence around that subject has been. And nobody really wants to be the one to take their dick out and be like, Donbass war, Putin is right. Right? Like, that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. Right? Like, let's no bullshit this situation. Bringing up the Donbass war and focusing on the Donbass war and talking about the Donbass war is saying that Putin is right. My position is as clear as this. I don't think he had a choice. Not if he's a fucking human being. Not if he's breathing air and has a soul. Right? I don't think he had a choice. There are Nazis shelling Russians on his border. Like, I think any full-blooded American, like, if there were literally Nazis on the border of Texas shelling other Americans in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you're goddamn right those Texans would go in there and fight those fucking Nazis. They'd have flags and Confederate truck and shotguns and fucking all the crazy shit, and they'd be saying, yeehaw, off we go, right? We're going to go fight us some Nazis, right? Abso-fucking-lutely they would. They wouldn't even think about it. They'd round the good old boys up. They go down. They shoot some fucking Nazis in New Mexico. You're goddamn right we would, right? But because it's Russians, right? Nobody gives a fuck at all. Like, nobody cares at all, right? Russians are subhuman, right? Like they don't count, right? They're threatening, but we defeat them. I watched Rocky 3. I think China is also playing both sides. I think India and China would should 100% go with Russia, and that's that. I mean, they definitely gotta form ranks, man. Like this is obviously the threat. Like this is obviously the threat, and it's got to be made. Like all of these places have a history with the fucking Europeans and the Americans, right? But the 100 years of humiliation was directly linked. Like the opium fucking wars are directly linked to the British colonies and to the British, right? Fucking Gandhi, for God's sakes, right? Fucking that whole, like, there was the Bangladeshi famine, for Jesus Christ's sake. Like, these guys know what these people are capable of, right? Like, don't trust us. Like, don't trust the West. Get the fuck out of here. Like, if there's another guy over here who's, like, right next door to you being like, hey, Truce, can we be buddies? Say yes. Say yes. Like, say yes to the dress, motherfucker. Like, put that dress on. Sure, it's a little baggy here. We'll cinch it up, okay? Say yes to the dress, okay? I do. Jesus. Have you seen Ryan Long's new video on YouTube, When Your New Identity is Supporting Ukraine? That's hilarious. That's hilarious, dude. When your new identity is... Oh, come on. Okay.
Yeah, been a couple weeks since I transformed into a Ukraine guy, and gotta say that I'm loving my new personality. Will you guys denounce Russia? Oh, you're still telling people to stay at home and get vaccinated? Oh, no, it's cool. I mean, yeah, whatever works for you, dude. Ukraine for life. Well, you know what I mean, for a couple weeks till we get the next one. This was Putin. I'd just sort of give him one of these, maybe one of these. I was a big Palestine guy. I was a big Afghanistan guy. What's going on there now? Yeah, actually, pretty good question. I haven't really checked in on it. Are they still doing the whole being a country thing? Oh, look, it's Putin's home. You either want America to get in there and start mucking things up, or you love Putin and want to marry him and have sex with him. I'm a pretty binary thinker. I'm non-binary in everything else, though. Would the dog be willing to denounce Vladimir Putin? I don't want to be on TV, but I don't... We'll remember that, that's all I'm saying. That will be remembered. I mean, yeah, in an ideal world, they wouldn't be white, but at least the bad guys are white, you know? I try to look on the bright side. I think we should just be blocking the airspace and then, you know, let the cards fall. You know, if it's war, then it's war. It's not like I'm fighting personally. I'm not like some soldier. I mean, if you ask me, Iraq was probably holding the WMDs for Putin. A little industry secret, but if you move on to a new personality, you never really have to be held accountable for how right or wrong you were about your last thing. Found out there's the Russian microwave, so getting rid of that.
That's it, you guys. Soup. That's the funniest thing that's been said about this whole thing. Yeah, if you ask me, the WMDs, those were Putin's. Mm-hmm. Yep. When the Americans invaded, Putin got them out of there. That's what's going on. Yep. They're all in it together. You ask me. Oh, yeah. This imperialist Canada, Zelensky, absolute cringe. Gave off Juan Guaido, Trump, to 2021. Yeah. Phoenix Ignis. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. 1,000 subs. I know. I did it. And they monetized me too, bud. You can see. Look at this little button right down here. May I draw your attention to the way you can pay me? Maoism definitely not coming from China. It's very much a native thing at India at this point. They've had a big Maoist movement since the 60s and 70s. Yeah, that's true. China hasn't ever really been Maoist as such. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting observation, actually. Like, China never really was Maoist. Like, that's a really, like, non-Chinese phenomenon. Their leader was Mao. And then their leader was Deng, right? And like, if I'm in China, I'm probably not going to be like, I'm a Maoist and Dengists are like, I think they see the continuum a little bit more clearly than we do in the West, right? And we struggle with that. Northern Creations, how you doing? Dude, Manitoba just lifted all mask requirements. Yep. Crazy seeing everyone's for the face for the first time in my school. Yep. We'll see how long it lasts, bud. We'll see how long it lasts. But I'm trying to take the position in terms of like mask requirements and like the moving on from COVID sort of thing that's going on. I'm trying to take it in stride, and I'm trying to say it was gonna happen at some point. right? It was going to happen at some point. We all knew it was going to happen at some point. Nobody believed or wanted to live in this like very restrictive, repressive sort of state. And so if this is the moment when most people are at least kind of giving way, okay. Like, I think I'm down. Like, and especially because, like, I look at the numbers, and, like, the COVID numbers are fairly low, right? Like, it's not insane. And I think I'm not seeing a big, like, upswell and a pushback from the medical community that I would expect. So I just think everybody's kind of like, we're over it. Like, we're good. and I'm like, okay. I'm still going to wear my mask when I go to work. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I haven't been sick since the start of this. I used to get sick 2 or 3 times a year. I used to get sick. And since I started wearing the mask, I haven't been sick once. So proof's in the pudding, if you ask me. I'd rather not be sick. But at the end of the day, right? And I very much believe this about, there's a lot of issues that I believe this, and COVID is definitely one of them. It really is up for each community to decide. Like, it truly is. Like, if this community and this city or this province says, this is what we want to do, this is the way we're going to go, okay. And if this group of people say, we're going to go a different route, we're going to do this, okay. I really do think that COVID really was one of these moments that was, and why it was so scary and eye-opening for lots of people is that it fundamentally is a community test. It's an event that comes through and puts stress on your community, your immediate community, right? And in many ways, there was a lot of failure that happened on a community level, right? And which is something I think we have to take seriously as a people. That, like, why are our communities so fragile and so weak and so susceptible? And why is it that when we do come together as a community and say, okay, we're going to go in this direction, there's like this contingent of people who genuinely believe that just because the majority agrees with it doesn't mean we're going to go along with it. In fact, we're going to protest and we're going to fight and we're going to dig our heels in and we're going to do all that kind of stuff. Like, that's very concerning. Right? Like, what you would want to see is you want to see everybody get into a room and say, this is what we think, this is what we think. And then there would be dissenters, there would be people who disagree, but then it would come down, we would all, and there would be a push in a direction, and the dissenters would go, okay, well, we don't agree, but we're a community and we're gonna go along. That's what you would want to see, and that's not what happened. Very concerning. Like, very, very concerning. That's my big takeaway from COVID. Like, if this is it for COVID, like if COVID's over and we just move on and it's over, my big takeaway is like, oh, like we actually can't come to a consensus and act like adults. Like, it's just straight up. Like, there's going to be a group of dissenters who will simply not go along with it. Oh, okay. That concerning. India was a separate country that slammed into Asia millions of years ago to form the Alps. What a wonderful thing to say. India was a separate country that slammed into Asia millions of years ago to form the Alps. Love it. Well, Igneous, that's nice of you, bud. Thank you so much, bud. I appreciate that a lot, man. I really do. I really appreciate that, bud. That's very sweet of you. That's very nice. Because, like, I have no idea how much the monetization is actually going to come my way. Like, I'm sure I'm only going to get pennies and shit. And I don't even know what it's going to look like, really. So, that's very kind of you, bud. I appreciate that so much. How about 20 whole pesos? Wow. I will be sure to not spend that all in one spot. That's very kind of you. Am I skipping shit? I feel like, yeah, lots of green screen looking videos of Zelensky. I'm pretty much okay with that, honestly. Like, even if he was in Kiev, I'd be like, yeah, green screen that shit. That's fine. Yeah, the USA never has protests. Oh, you guys are chatting away. Yeah. Uh-oh, Priest John is coming out. Yeah. She's not too bright. I know, according to the Manitoba Premier, the pandemic has been over for a while. Well, I mean, the Conservatives are fucked in Manitoba. Like, it's an NDP government. Like, that in my opinion, the election is going to be a formality. Like, that Brian Pallister fucking resigned? Are you kidding me? Brian Pallister's resignation basically ended it, right? That they just put this woman in so that they could kind of save face on like the gender issue, right? And be like, yeah, Conservatives, we care about women's rights. Here's a woman. Look, of course, right? Yeah, there's no Nazis in Ukraine. Zelensky's a Jew. That kind of like defensive posturing that Conservatives often do. But like, Brian Pallister fucking stepped down and resigned in the middle of a pandemic. That's the end of that party, dude. Like, it's over for them. Like, yeah, I'm definitely going to vote for the guys who, when we needed them the most, resigned. Yeah. Definitely going in on that. And honestly, like, it's somebody like Wab Canoes. It's their time in Manitoba, man. Like, it's going to be a good moment for Manitoba. I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of like cultural healing and a lot of interesting stuff is going to happen. Not necessarily in terms of policy. Like, I don't think Wab Canoe is going to usher in like a communist utopia or anything. But like, I think that I've been saying this a lot from my observation about Manitoba, because I haven't lived there in quite some time. I visit, though. And I got to tell you, all across of Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation moment has been mainly pandering. And when I'm in Manitoba, it doesn't feel that way. It really does feel like the Truth and Reconciliation moment. Like, maybe it hasn't like been this huge sweeping thing, but it's definitely had an impact. Like, a noticeable impact. Like, as somebody who keeps kind of popping in and out of it, every time I pop back in, I'm like, it is different. Like, there's a different energy. There's a different vibe. People are treating each other differently. There's more empathy. There's more compassion. There's more awareness generally, which I think is just a huge deal, right? So I'm looking forward to Wab Canoe. I'm looking forward to tearing his asshole apart just like the rest of these losers. But at least it's going to be a good cultural moment. Yeah. Here's a question I've been wondering for a while. Why is it that in the past 100 years, only Japan has ever become a liberal democracy after a U.S. invasion with a regime change? Oh, dude, that's actually real straightforward. Like, Japan, when they lost World War II, it wasn't just that they lost militarily. They fucking lost everything, dude. Like, everything. That they had like a culture built on like an emperor system that was essential. Like, they were an imperial monarchy in many ways, right? And they lost that. That went away. They literally can't have a military. Like, they were defeated. Like, it's straight up over for Japan. And not only did they lose not only did they lose military supremacy, they completely lost their military. Not only did they lose their culture, they completely lost their culture. Like, what you are seeing now, like, take a look at the shit that comes out of Japan culturally. Like, the game shows, the anime, the fucking weird, like, hentai shit, like, all of the crazy nonsense that comes out of Japan. It's a people rebuilding a new culture. And is it rooted in the old culture? Obviously, you don't just get rid of it, but like, their entire structure and system of belief went away. And there was a huge movement in Japan of like, these guys got nuked. Like, they got fucking nuked. You don't get nuked and then look at one another and go, yeah, everything we did was right. Yeah, we're super smart, right? We only got nuked twice. We're the only country that has the distinction of having civilian populations get nuked. Yeah, I think that everything we did before this moment was correct. Don't you? Yeah. No, of course not. Just like after World War I, there was a big Dadaist movement throughout Eastern Europe, and Dadaism is absurdism, right? And the purpose of the absurdist movement is to cleanse the society, is to render anything sacred absurd, so that it can be cleansed, right? It's a form of cultural cleansing that happens by the culture itself, right? You can see it writ large in like Monty Python. Monty Python does a ton of Dadaist shit. All of the cartoons in Monty Python are Dadaist expressions. Punk uses Dadaism very explicitly. It's a way to defang propaganda. It's a way to defang holiness, right? And to change figures who were unimpeachable or unapproachable, like kings, queens, popes, right? And render them infantile and childish and worthy of our ire and mockery. And that happened in China in a big way. Happened in China in a big fucking way. They essentially culturally cleansed themselves. And while they were doing that, here's this big gigantic military off their coast who just fucking nuked them, saying, "You're a liberal democracy now." And the Japanese went, "Yes, sir." That's what happened, right? So all of these other places didn't do that because they still believe, like the people of Iraq believe that their belief system is correct, right? They think that what they're doing is fine and it works for them. Afghanistan, all of these places, Libya, like all of them, they genuinely think like, yeah, Islam is like, this is our culture, this is our heritage. Go fuck yourselves. Japan, no, they walked away from World War II saying, our culture and heritage is wrong. Sharply different. Sharply different. Federation in Southeast Asia ain't happening. That's probably true. But the Ishan organization is pretty strong, and even though it was created by the US as an instrument to control, like the EU, they have lost control of it. Look at you, Transylvania coming in with spitting some facts. I love it, man. I love it when people in the chat know more about a subject than I do. It's very brilliant. And I always ask, like, if there's a place I should go to learn more about this subject, please let me know, because I know a good amount about what's going on here, but I wish I knew more about the day to day. If you understand me, that like I'm really good on the history for lots of places, but I don't really know where to go to know more about the day to day stuff. I don't necessarily trust the Chinese state media in regards to this, and I don't know if these places have their own media. I do know Luna Oi, who lives in Vietnam. She's a YouTuber from Vietnam. She's brilliant. I love her. I'm glad the USA never has protests. Yeah, exactly. Don't forget arming, funding, and whitewashing terrorists yet. They are weaponizing them against the BRI projects, how to bomb infrastructure, kill Chinese engineers in Pakistan. Of course. No, of course, that's exactly what they're going to do to the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Like but the reality is, and I've been saying this since the beginning, the Chinese can build faster than the United States can bomb. Like, by the time the United States has another set of bombs ready to go, they'll have rebuilt and then built more. It's just, they're just better. Yeah, the overthrowing happens by funding those nations, which leads to the latter eventually. While people protesting the war now are mostly the same people who are pro-Navalny, there are middle-class, college-educated liberals, the people paid off by Western NGOs, yeah. This guy, Futuramas. The Uyghur genocide is most certainly a claim, and the majority have bought into it. It's not a lie by omission, just straight up lie. I think the Uyghur genocide is a bit looser than that. I think people are loose on that. First of all, I don't think a lot of people know about it, right? Like, it's impossible not to know about this Ukrainian war. And because that shakes people, right? Like, a nuclear superpower that isn't us is gone to war. That shakes us, right? And everybody, like, big rah, rah, rah. The Uyghur genocide thing didn't really penetrate the consciousness of the populace to this degree. It wasn't that important to people. And I think if you started talking about Xinjiang and a Uyghur genocide to the average Canadian or American, they would be like, what are you talking about? Like, really? I just don't think it's penetrated culturally that much. And I also think like the narrative kind of just died out on its own, more or less, because people like me, like the debunk train really went woo woo, and we really got on it, and it was like really, it's so easy to throw shade at the like for Adrian Zenz alone. Like, literally just show someone Adrian Zenz and be like, this is your source. And people will be like, okay, yeah. Like, really? Oh. Like, the guy's nuts. Like, some of the shit that's come out of Adrian Zenz's mouth is batshit. Like, absolutely batshit. And that's your fucking source? Oh, okay. And then you can just start throwing shade at it in, like, really, really easy ways. Like, really weird how they've got the satellite technology to take like pinpoint accurate photos of the tops of buildings, but they can't like show you the genocide, right? Like 8 million people are dead. Like that's an enormous operation. Like that's an enormous operation. And then on top of that, the West's own narrative about the Xinjiang, the Uyghur genocide has shifted, that it changed from being like a genocide to being prison labor to being forced labor, right? Like so the narrative itself has shifted, and that weakens it a lot too. But at the end of the day, I just think that like people don't know, because they don't care to know, really. Like the people who want to know do. I thought it was 65 million because it claimed there's 100 million dead from communism total. Yeah. It's between 30 or 100 million, depends who you talk to. Right, just small differences, right? Yeah, more like 20%. China didn't have such a large percentage back then. Yeah, you're probably right. Let's cut the difference. Let's call it 15. What do you think? What is true is that there was a famine. The Chinese government itself said as much, admitted there were big problems, things went wrong, but the numbers claimed by the West are absurd. Yeah, this is a more balanced view, right? Like, but there's a difference between like a famine where you got to tighten up a little bit and like a famine where like everybody died. Yeah. Nobody in the West cares about those famines. Yeah, exactly. Even in that massive document that I gave you from the Libertarian Party where they have source after source after source, they barely talk about the Donbass War. Of course. Like, it's so infuriating to me. Yeah, Oliver Stone in Revealing Ukraine does talk about the Donbass War, which is why they had to remove it, I think. Like, they know how dangerous it is to talk about that war. Like, it's crucial. It's a linchpin. I talk about this all the time on this channel, guys, that focus on the linchpins. Like don't worry so much about, like, figure out the fringes and figure out all that kind of stuff, but where's the pivot? Where's the actual linchpin, right? And the Donbass War is absolutely a linchpin. That once you understand the Donbass War, you can't say that Putin, like, you literally can't say Putin attacked unprovoked. Like, there's no way that you can maintain that if you understand the Donbass War, right? So it's a linchpin argument. And so it's absolutely crucial that nobody knows about it. Consider the MOVE bombing. No one really talks about that, and there was the U.S. government flat out bombing Americans. I don't know if I understand you here, Con. We must remember the Canadian elites were very pro-fascist when it was rising in Europe, yeah. Publicly very supportive, yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. No, we loved fascism. The Nazis took a lot of ideas from us. John, how dare you being greedy? Don't you dare. The purpose to be yourself. Look, I'm just trying to pay my rent, okay? I'm just trying to pay my rent, okay, Eric? I just need my rent paid, that's all. I just want enough money to be able to pay my rent. That's it. That's all. I know these days, like, paying your rent is like $500,000 billion. Like, literally, you've got to, like, sacrifice a goat to the god Methuselah or whatever. Their response to it is, why didn't Putin interfere earlier if he actually cared about those people? He had 8 years. Yeah, completely ignoring the fact that he did try to do it with the Minsk agreements, and he was also arming them, right? Like, where do you think they got this, like, heavy ordnance? Like they get it from Russia, right? So not only is he attempting a diplomatic solution, he's also actively arming the separatists or whatever, right? And also, incidentally, like, you don't just have the kind of military standing and ready to go that you need to actually do an invasion on this scale. They're not just sitting there, right? It's not like you can just like, well, they're not agreeing to the Minsk agreements. Everyone get ready for an invasion tomorrow, right? It takes a minute, right? You got to actually organize this and put it together. It's 200,000 people, right? Like it's not a small operation. You don't just do it, right? And so like, but that kind of commentary is just like, it really shows you how little people know. It's like, yeah, like Putin should do diplomacy. He has been trying. Has he ever been trying? They even signed documents, right? They reached an agreement, the Minsk agreement, right? What is that if not diplomacy? Well, they should do more diplomacy. Like, you can only talk to a brick wall for so long before you realize that the only thing it'll respond to is a hammer. It was the Kiev regime egged on by the U.S. who refused to implement Minsk and continued shelling. Nah, the whole thing's fucked, dude. Like, the whole thing's fucked. Mark, how you doing, bud? This guy's a libertarian, I think, but some of his jokes are funny. Who's this guy in that? Ukraine on Fire by Oliver Stone should be mandatory. Yeah, absolutely. Jack Fosebek just retweeted Jacobin. What reality are we living in that right-wing Trump fan CIA PSYOP tweets Jacobin article about Azov? Look, I actually do think that there are a lot of people. Like, here's something to really here's something that people don't want to hear. And we're going a bit late today, and I think it's worth talking about. Right? Human beings are extremely complex. And one thing you learn when you study them is that they contradict themselves. Like, an individual human holds many contradictory beliefs inside of their brain, right? And you can either let that drive you crazy or you can just accept that that's the truth. And the same people who you really dislike and really despise in one breath, you'll really turn around and think are really lovely and beautiful in another, right? And what's so interesting, nutty, let's be honest, it's nutty as shit, is that the people who are actually pulling on the right side of this Ukrainian narrative are the QAnon mega hats. Right? Like, who's saying that, hey, wait a minute, NATO encroachment? Who's in America? Who's actually saying, hey, there is NATO encroachment here, you know? Hey, whoa, there was a coup in 2014. Whoa, Nazis. Oh, whoa. Who's saying that? Right? It's the red hats. It's the MAGA crowd. Right? Whether you like it or not. Right? It's them that ostensibly on this issue, they are our allies. Right? Whether you like it or not, there they are, talking the same game that we're talking. Because Donald Trump gets put into power on an anti-war message. Right? And I think that those Republicans, right, for all of their faults, and there are faults, like, let's be real fucking clear, right? Like, no one's pretending like these people are Snow White innocent, you know, babies. But what they have been consistent on and what they seem to believe is, hey, maybe we should stop doing so much goddamn fucking war everywhere. Huh? Maybe we should quit that. Right? Now, whether or not Donald Trump is actually going to be an anti-war leader, right? Like, or whether he was, you could definitely debate that. But the reality is that the people who are voting for him are against war and are becoming more aware of how it's us that are fucking around, right? That it's these red hat wearing mega conservative Republicans who are putting two and two together in Ukraine and being like, wait a god dang minute, right? It's a fucking bunch of Dale Gribbles. That's what it is. It's like King of the Hill, and it's a bunch of fucking Dale Gribbles who are going like, now you wait a minute here, Hank. You won't believe what's going on in Ukraine. The whole thing's a CIA psyop, man, where they cooed the government, and you'll never believe who they're funding. They're funding the god dang Nazis. Well, Dale, that's a story that seems a bit too much for me. I gotta get off to work, all right? Now, wait a minute, Dale. You tell me again. You tell me one more time. What was the name of that group that they was funding? Yeah, man, dang. Tell me, Dale. What was the name of that dang gang group down there? Their dang gang fund down there in the Ukraine. Yeah, man. It was the Amov Battalion, man. Of course, he would get the name wrong. Like it's like that. If that happened in real life, I would believe it, right? Like, and so, and don't get me wrong, like the Red Hat mega crowd, they've got their faults, for sure. But they've been fairly consistent. They're not a big fan of war, and they don't trust the government, right? So they're putting this one together. They're putting 2 and 2 together on this shit. And like, I don't know. There's a little part of me that's like, God bless them. Like, God bless the Red Hats on this one. Fucking crazy nuts. I'm just happy that there are Dale Gribbles in the world, you know? Yeah, it's around $1 worth. You'll get like 80 cents. Yeah. Honestly, every little bit counts at this point. I have a feeling Fauci is going to return from mainstream media hiatus soon. Yeah. I think that people are played out with Fauci. I think nobody wants to see this guy anymore. Even people who like him are just like, no thanks. Next. NDP in Alberta and Manitoba. Meanwhile, in Ontario, crickets. Yeah, dude. Fuck these NDP. NDP currently 8 in the lead. Majority territory, again, in Ontario. Yeah. Nah, sorry, Mocked. It was a 4, bud. Good to see you. We're going a bit late here. I just want to get to the end of this. It'd be nice for Ontario to have an Indigenous socialist premier. Yeah, it'd be nice. Ontario colleges going on strike on Friday. Amazing. Did you hear that South Korea elected a far-right neocon warmonger on the 19th? Yeah, by a single percentage point. By a single fucking percentage point. All of the news that I'm seeing on it, though, he's going to be somewhat toothless. You know what I mean? Like, he got elected by a very thin margin, but that doesn't mean he's a dictator that has control over everything, right? The thing with pandemics is you can't address them locally because they are a global problem. The economy is interconnected. Yeah, you can't solve this on a local basis. There are no hard borders between cities. But while that is factually true, that's not how people work, unfortunately, right? Like, it actually isn't. Like, communities need to come together and come to terms with it on their own. And that really is the truth. That a lot of the problems that happened in North America, if you ask me, is that communities were being overridden, that communities were being shunted aside. There's people are afraid of like big government and mandates and things like this. And that is itself a problem. Why is there so much mistrust in our society? Right? And that's a conversation that's worth having. Why is there so much mistrust in our society? I mean, if you ask me, it has to do with the alienation of capital, right? That like everyone is alienated from everyone, that we don't actually understand each other on a human level, right? That we are commodities first, and our humanity is often shunted to the side, right? And there's a lot of focus on external presentation, right? What one might call identity politics, and not an awful lot of like talking about the heart, talking about love, compassion, not a lot of talking about like what it means to actually like be alive in the world at all, right? And everything is supposed to be defined in very, very narrow, superficial ways. And if that's the way that you're talking in your society, it becomes extremely difficult to just understand that humans are humans and what that actually means. Like, someone's humanity matters more than anything else, and it's the subject that we talk about the least, if we talk about it at all. And if you ask me, that is built into the system, that capitalists can't have their commodities realizing that they're actually human fucking beings. Because I genuinely believe if a human had a single day, one day, where they got to be a human, where that was all it was, one single day of basic humanity, they would, and if everybody experienced that single day of being just a human being living in the world, the next day they would dedicate themselves to the project of tearing this system down. Because this system doesn't allow humanity. That's why people go on vacation, right? So that they can start the process of beginning to feel as though they might be perhaps a human being. You never get there. You don't do it in a fucking week vacation, especially while you're running around a place that you don't know where you are. Like, even if you go out camping and you just like sit in the woods for a week, like that's not going to do it. Like, no. But the traumatic road that we have to take to a people to reclaim our humanity, it's going to take generations. It's going to take generations. And I genuinely believe that if everybody experienced it for only a day, it would be the end of capitalism. It would happen the next day. Anyway, I think that's the end of me, guys. Yeah, that's a good note to end it on. Always remember, you guys, you are a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure you never realize it. And just stay the good little commodity that you're supposed to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.